This podcast has been brought to you by Voyager's World. We are building the most amazing hospitality network.
Okay, let's start.
All right.
Gus, how do you say your name, man?
How I say my name?
Yeah, how do you say it?
I say it like August.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a pretty common name in Sweden, but usually when I'm traveling I call myself Gus, just because if you say your name is August, people kind of assume that you're a fairly cheap stripper, so it's just way easier to avoid people tipping you, calling yourself Gus. So I don't think there's an official pronunciation for Gus. But,
in their last name, how do you say it?
That's a lot less strippery. It's just Andersson.
Andersson, yeah, but two S's, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, cheers to that. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you a lot for hosting me.
Yeah, so I invite you to be on this podcast because the conversation that we had yesterday or the other day was really cool. And I thought, wow, I should put this guy in front of a camera.
Yeah, I'm flattered. I don't think I've ever heard that before, and let's see if you get disappointed later on. But
I'll tell you later. Yeah. So I like our conversation so far very much. So don't fuck it up now.
I'll try my best with a little bit of help from Bud Light.
Yeah, that helps. So you did some traveling so far, and I think that when I saw your couch request on Couchsurfing, it was well written and there were references and all that. But the first thing that caught my attention was that this guy is Swedish. I want to have more friends in Sweden.
I remember that.
So I said,
I guess it's a pretty strategic place to find a place to stay, like pretty far up north, just in case you.
Exactly. I have a couple friends there now, or maybe three, and they are in places that I cannot pronounce the name. So I would have to copy and paste things. But yeah, I have a few friends there, and I am pretty sure that work or pleasure will make me travel to Sweden soon.
Yeah, it seems like you go to Europe quite a bit, so I imagine you're probably going to end up in Sweden pretty soon.
Pretty much every year. I was counting that since 2011, I have spent about 2.5 years in Europe. Yeah, if I add together all the travels, about 2.5.
And you said about a year and a half in the Ukraine.
A year and a half in Ukraine. And in about a year in all the other countries. But like Bulgaria alone takes like 3 months of it.
Yeah, because I realized that actually I haven't traveled too much in Europe. I don't know, I always felt like it was too close and that I would end up there sooner or later anyway. So I haven't, there's so many of my neighboring countries that I've never been to. Like Norway, for instance, I've never been to Norway.
You've never been to Norway? You are from Sweden and you've never been to Norway. Well, a lot of my friends from Europe say that I know more of Europe than they do.
Yeah, I think that might be true.
It makes sense. If you're European and you can travel, you want to go to South America and Asia and America, but or Africa, but not maybe the neighboring country.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have several friends that they know only like 1 or 2 countries in Europe, and they know a lot of everything else.
Yeah. But I guess for me anyway, it just feels like something that once I start traveling a bit more comfortably, then Norway is going to be a very nice location to end up.
What do you mean by comfortable?
I mean more maybe staying in hotels and having liking things to be a bit more organized than comparing to, say, Central America. It's a lot of the time it's a little bit chaotic, but in a nice way. But I imagine that chaos will probably get a bit tiring after a few years of traveling, if you understand what I mean by that.
I don't think I know. I don't think I understand.
I think
but let me explain why. Let me just clarify one thing first. Have you been to South America at all?
No, so Central America.
Central America. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Okay. Which countries?
I think all of them aside from Panama.
Okay. You have to visit Panama, man.
I'm heading there.
It's the 51st state. We like to say.
Yeah, I realized they had the American dollar aside from the coins. That's called like the Balboa or something like that.
They use American dollars there. It is their currency.
Yeah. But apparently they make their own coins.
Same with Costa Rica. Yeah, same with Costa Rica. You can just transact in dollars.
Yeah, which makes it a lot simpler.
Yeah, it's on purpose. The Americans are the main tourists, are the most tourists in Panama and Costa Rica, so they make it very easy for us. But back to the question that I didn't understand. So you're saying you're calling it a more organized trip. Why? Why is it disorganized in Central America for you?
Well, I think it's I imagine anyway, depending on what part of life you're in, you travel in different ways. Not necessarily, but I do think that you look for different things in the way you travel, and some countries are cheaper and more spontaneous. They're very open for spontaneity in ways that other countries are not. For instance, I think Sweden, if you just show up in Stockholm without any accommodation booked, I think it would be fairly difficult to arrange things like that just on the spot, whereas other places in the world it's harder maybe to book things in advance, but on the other hand it's easier to make it happen on site. I don't know if you get my point. So
no, I think I get. It's more open to improvisation in South America or Central America. And definitely, I make the parallel with Eastern Europe, which is, to me, has that similarity with South America. You can just show up and improvise. And even when you do, and in fact, I booked hotels in Kiev, for instance, that when I got to the hotel, it was so bad that I thought, no, I'm not going to spend money on this. I prefer, I could even spend more, but I want a hotel that is at least clean and interesting, not that crap. But but improvising, you just, especially if you're traveling by motorcycle, that you can go to places that are far. Oh, it's much better now. I want to, one of these days, I want to go to a spa and spend the night. Actually, there are some spas around Kiev that you can rent a room at the spa, so you can just walk inside and you have access to the sauna and the swimming pool and the other sauna and the other thing. But then you can have your own cottage right there. I like that kind of thing. So I don't like to stay in hotels necessarily, but I like to stay in weird places. Yes. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I just imagine that I will also start looking for different ways to travel when I get older. And the resource that I have now, being a student, is mainly time. I don't have that much money to spend on traveling, but I do have the advantage of being able to take several months off a year, and then that's very suited to traveling places that require maybe to be flexible with your schedule and maybe spending a few extra days and arranging things on site, whereas say in 20-30 years I imagine I'll be traveling in a way where I'm more limited for time but not as much for money, and I think that kind of travel is more suited for more, let's call them organized countries like Western Europe, for instance.
Yeah. Western Europe is very, it's more, things are more orderly and things tend to work better.
So that's one reason why I haven't been to Norway. To get back to the original question.
Why not Norway? I'm really curious to visit Scandinavia, and the main reason that I believe I'll love Scandinavia is because it's full of Scandinavians. I really like you guys. That
maybe
is
just like the ones that get out of Scandinavia.
Or perhaps I like more the ones that come here. But I have met with many Scandinavians, and the impression that I have of you guys is very positive. So I'm really curious to go there. And I don't know, maybe you can draw a parallel with the Germans, for instance. The Germans that I meet outside of Germany, in average are slightly different than the Germans that I meet in Germany, but I still like them. You know, but you can tell it's different. Same with a lot of countries, because the traveler, when you meet a traveler, it's not a normal cut of, you know, the demographics. You know, you're looking at the people that are the most open-minded, usually the most curious and interested, and more interesting people to talk to. If you're meeting couch surfers and travelers and adventurers, it will usually be awesome. And I understand it's like that with every country. Like I met many English people in travels, and they were generally super fun. And when I went to London, I found them generally kind of boring, you know. But everybody tells me that I'm not doing a just criticism of it, because even the English don't like London that much. You know, they say, you know, you have to go to the other cities, you're going to like it more. So I'll suspend my judgment that much.
Maybe London is at the other end of the demographic spectrum.
Perhaps.
You have travelers over there.
Yeah, perhaps. I really didn't like it that much. Even though the city is beautiful, it is interesting, it's different. I definitely wanted to run the bridges, you know, around the Parliament and the Big Ben and all that. All those bridges that are in the city center, I ran them. And it's something that I wanted to do for many years, because I keep seeing movies, you know, that the story goes on in London, you know, from spy movies to modern Jason Bourne movies or whatever it is. A lot of stories go on in London, so I always saw these images of the city center, and I wanted to see it. So when I got there, I really took that in. Like, I like to watch movies before I go to a city. Like, I watch the game before going to San Francisco. I watch every James Bond movie, perhaps modern.
Before going to London.
Before going to London, I watch it. That movie. I don't remember. There's a movie with Nicolas Cage in New Orleans. I watch it right before going to New Orleans.
And maybe I should start preparing that way as well.
It's awesome. You get, because if you, any place that you go, you will walk in with stereotypes in your mind.
Yeah, I think my preparation for Miami was Dexter and CSI Miami.
Yeah,
so.
If you are aware of the stereotypes, why not exaggerate them? Right? So if you're going to Miami, watch Miami Vice and Dexter and all the other bullshit about Miami. You know that you're not going to find the bullshit, but you see the city, you see the buildings, you can compare, for instance, with watching Dexter. Very little of what you see in the movie you can see here, because it's not filmed in Miami. You know, they just do, they do a few seconds. Usually the opening scene is like, with the first few seconds they show like South Beach or a piece of this part of the city or that part. But the filming itself, notice that when you're watching movies like Dexter or some others, or the old especially Dexter, I noticed, because I watch like half an episode. I never watch an entire episode.
Really?
No, I don't watch series, but I watched half an episode, and I was looking at that scene behind, you know, the actors, and there were hills. And I thought that's not Miami. Then we don't have any hills here.
All right.
So because they film in Los Angeles.
No, they do film in Los Angeles.
Generally they avoid having any hills in the background. Yeah. But sometimes I guess they don't notice that.
Ooh, that's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
But so far, nobody that I've seen has gotten murdered so far on this trip, as far as I know, anyway.
Yeah,
so
it's
stereotypes broken already.
Yeah, Miami is a very safe city. I mean, of course, it's a big city, so occasionally shit happens, but it tends to be little here. Yeah. I think that now it's far from the list of top 10 most dangerous cities in America, way far.
I think it's just too hot to murder anyone.
But
I
guess so. You get out wanting to kill someone, and it's so hot that you think, I'll go back and just drink a Corona.
That's the way I feel anyway.
Yeah, but Miami used to be one of the most dangerous cities in the world. I think it was number 1 or 2 during the, like 82, 83. It used to be number 1 or number 2.
Because of the cocaine, I guess.
Because of the cocaine wars. Watch Cocaine Cowboys. You will love it. And watch Cocaine. It's a movie. There is Cocaine Cowboys. There is Cocaine Cowboys 2, but it's not a sequel. It's the same movie but re-edited and with a few extra. But I like the original, the first one better.
Is it a documentary? Or?
Yeah, it's a documentary. So watch the Cocaine Cowboys, and then everything that you see on that movie, you're not going to see here because it's all gone. You know, all those gangsters, they were either killed or they are in jail or now they are politicians. You know, that the people are not shooting each other on the streets anymore, usually. But it's still a very safe city. But
do you like to watch movies before going to a place to exaggerate the stereotypes in order to break them then, or just to get...
It helps contrast. Helps contrast from the stereotype to the reality. So you know the stereotype will be broken anyway. So I prefer to intensify the stereotype.
Or is it the déjà vu that you...
No. It's really to intensify it. I like to see all the bullshit about the city. You know, like before I went to New York, I watched a bunch of movies and that were shot in New York, including like sci-fi and stuff like that. And so I know it's going to be very different. But the other thing is that by watching the movie, I see some places, then I try to find those places. Like there is a scene in the game that have you seen that movie with Michael Douglas and yeah, it's a great movie, a mindfuck. There is a scene that he is running after his brother, and the brother gets into like under this street. There is some steps, and then there's a payphone. I found that corner. It was not very far from my hotel, so it felt really cool to be in the same street and remember from the movie that I saw just 1 or 2 days before, and then be there and see, I recognize this corner. You know, it is a good feeling. It's interesting. Only modern travelers have that privilege of having seen something on the screen. And even be possible to open it on your phone and compare what you are watching with what you are looking at. And not very often they match, because many movie scenes are either modified or they don't exist, or it's a exact corner that you will never find on the streets of that city. So when you do, it is quite interesting.
Satisfying.
Yeah, it is very satisfying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like I watched Forrest Gump before going to Savannah, Georgia, because that part where he's sitting at the bus stop is in a city square in Savannah, and I found that city square, the exact one, and it doesn't look exactly the same because that city square doesn't have a bus stop in the same place. It's actually just a little bit of sidewalk, and that is the park behind it. So I could tell that. And now watching the movie, I recognize the place. I recognize, you know, there is a scene that shows the tower from the university building, and then it pans down and it gets to the square, and then to Forrest Gump. I recognize, and then it goes out again. So I recognize exactly that point.
But at least they filmed that one in Savannah.
Yeah, they filmed it in Savannah. The rest of the movie was filmed in South Carolina, actually, most of it. But I recognize a lot of the places.
Yeah, I guess I have to give that a try. Usually I find it kind of, I don't know if it's just because I'm lazy, or at least I try to rationalize it for myself that I don't really do any research before I get to a place, because I imagine that makes me more spontaneous. But if I'm being completely honest, I think it's just so easy not to prepare at all, because things tend to work themselves out.
Well, it doesn't take any work to do nothing. Yeah, right. It's easy to not do anything.
And a lot of the time it does. I mean, sometimes it does get boring when you have no idea what to do. But a lot of the time, at least that I've found, especially through couch surfing, it does help to not have any plans whatsoever.
I like to have ideas of what to do in a place, but I go being very conscious that the plans may not work that way. I may not have an opportunity to do any of it. So this way, if it doesn't happen, I don't care. but I bring some ideas of what do I want to do, or what I want to see, or what I want to happen while I was there. For instance, the first time that I went to San Francisco, I remember when I was living in Brazil, I watched this movie that now I cannot even remember what movie it is, but there is a scene where this guy is driving a convertible on this road that is right next to the ocean. So that is the road, the winding road, and then the cliffs, very high cliffs, and way down there, that's the Pacific Ocean. It's beautiful. And in the movie, he's doing it, driving that road, and at some point he does a curve goes to the left, and then he's right in front of right ahead of him is the Golden Gate Bridge. So I remember that, and the first time that I went to San Francisco, I flew in. It was for a conference. So with a coworker, we rented a car and we went north to Halifax, and we found some amazing roads, and we went back on that road. So it was like that, winding, beautiful. It's the end of part of the Pacific Coast Highway, PCH. It was part of the PCH. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. But on the last curve that goes to left, that you get in more inland, you're not on the coast, you are not in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. There is still another park, but that park doesn't have any road to go through. There is only a road to go in, but you have to go out the same road. So they cut on the film from that curve to being right next to the Golden Gate Bridge. But in reality, it's different. There is another park that you have to go around, and then you get in, and then you will be right in front of the bridge. So yeah, when you see the reality, you can then contrast and see how it doesn't match. But it's still super interesting, because now you're discovering, oh, it looks like this, but it's actually like that. Same with one day I watched a movie that the story goes on in Kiev before going there. And I saw some avenues and some buildings and stuff, but things really look different. First, because the movie was old and it was during Soviet times, and Kiev changed, to a good extent. But even the streets and the way the things flew. In the movie, the streets were very empty, and maybe that's how they were. But right now it's busy. There's a lot of traffic, so it didn't have the same vibe. But it was good to compare.
I wonder how. I mean, as long as you can live with the idea that things turn out different than what you imagined, then I guess that's a good idea.
I'm looking for the differences. I want to find the similarities. I want to find the places, but I'm looking to see what is it that doesn't match. Of course, I'm watching sci-fi too. I watched a Cloverfield before the last time that I went to New York. All right, pure sci-fi. But I wanted to refresh that image and see New York in a recent movie. Even though I already knew the city, but I wanted to see it through a new movie. And then go again. The visual of it matches perfectly, but I like to bring some visual. Maybe I'm too much of a visual guy, but I like to bring that to mind just before I go to a place. Now, my next trip is probably going to be to Amsterdam, and definitely I'm going to watch some movies that the story happens there before I go, even though I have been there before.
Van Damme, is he Dutch?
Van Damme is Belgian.
Belgian, somewhat close anyway. Yeah, because I'm thinking about like plans and beforehand. It sounds like your kinds of plans are a lot different than most other people, but I've just found, at least on my own part, that if you have a very specific goal in mind, then if it doesn't come true, it's so easy to fall into. I don't know if it would qualify as loss aversion or what psychological mechanism it would fall under, but anyway, that you experience you imagine that you would experience something special or something in a certain way, and when it doesn't turn out that way, you see it as a loss which
a
affects
disappointment.
Yeah, and that disappointment is disproportionately large compared to the gain that the experience would.
Well, I think it would be the case if you went to the place expecting to see what you saw in the movie.
Yeah,
I expect to see different.
Yeah,
I go looking for the differences. You know, I want to find what is similar, of course, but I want to find the differences. You know, I want to be able to compare, but I want to compare from a fresh memory, not compare from nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and especially I want to compare with my stereotypes. You know, if I have any stereotype about something, I really try to remember it. You know, because I want to see. It's very interesting when it matches, and it's also very interesting when it's completely opposite.
How do you handle it when it matches, though? Because I imagine that must happen quite often, at least to some extent.
It happens, and it happens often. But it's not. It's fun. I think it's fun. You know, when you go to a place thinking that they talk in a certain way or that they do things in a certain way, and you see there, oh yeah, that's how it is. It's usually humorous. Let me pick one. I thought, for instance, that Vienna, the first time that I went to Vienna, I was really expecting, and I had this stereotype in my mind, that it was going to be very classy, that it's going to be very elegant, and there will be opera and classic music everywhere. And it's true. Opera there and classic music are a major thing. They have statues for Mozart, okay? They have a statue of Mozart pissing somewhere. You know, it's like it's music is everywhere. All right, but it was very nice to see that. But it was really nice to see that Vienna is about a lot more than that. Because if it was just there, just classic and expensive, it was going to be boring. And the first time that I went to the city, I didn't stop because I didn't have any good plans to stay there. But the second time I went there, I had friends that were local, and I had an opportunity to discover what else is in Vienna. And that discovery was amazing. I found out that it's a fun city, very safe, beautiful, and a lot of fun. It has a nightlife that is unbelievable, but it doesn't show on the travel guides. It's not on the service. You need to know what to search for. You need to have a local that shows you where it is, because they have the shows, the music, the concerts, the clubs, the places they have are impressive.
Yeah, and I found that in so many places, just that having someone local to show you around, it does make such a massive difference in so many places.
And in some places, some of them you are going to, like in South America, I think that visiting a local instead of being in a hotel improves your safety a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It does improve, because the local can tell you where to go, where not to go, what time you shouldn't be on the streets, or what time you shouldn't know, or is it safe to use a taxi here or not safe. Like in Miami, I keep telling people, don't take a cab. It's not because it's unsafe, it's because most of them are crooks. Yes, I said it. But and Uber here is very cheap, you know, most of the time. Even public transport is very reasonable here, very interesting, and in a lot of lines it's for free. So it's great to use public transport and Uber in Miami, and so I tell people. But if you go to a place like Rio, it's not just a matter of convenience or price. It's a matter of staying alive or not. If you may go to the wrong neighborhood and not make it. You know, so in a place like Rio, it's life and death. You know, if you are today in a place like Venezuela, it may be the difference between being in an armed conflict demonstration against the government, where people are getting shot or tear gassed, or being in a nice neighborhood or being in a boring neighborhood. You know, or the experience can be incredibly different.
As long as you make sure not to be hosted by one of the protesters,
or one of the people that the police is going to knock on the door at midnight. So there are places where the line between reasonably safe and dangerously unsafe, that line is very tenuous. Like Rio, like São Paulo, like I would say now Buenos Aires, and there are countries that are kind of similar to Europe in terms of everything being kind of cool and organized, like Chile.
Yeah. I remember in Tegucigalpa, I stayed with a girl there, and she had to go do an errand for a few hours, and she was just so freaked out that I was going to get, I don't know, robbed or kidnapped or something, that she dropped me off at a mall and told me not to go outside until she came back to pick me up, which was an interesting experience.
Yeah. And the local usually knows. People have different levels of tolerance to risk.
Yeah.
And if I am in a country like Brazil where I know the language, I would, or in Ukraine where I know the body language, I would be quite comfortable going around, even in neighborhoods that even the locals don't like. But in a place where I don't understand the language, I would have to trust my host, even though my personal tolerance to risk is very different than my host's. But I don't have the instruments to measure how my situation is, or to know if I'm getting in danger or not. So I will have to use their information instead.
Yeah.
And they are usually going to be very conservative, because they know that you are going to get in trouble much easier than they do.
Yeah, and it looks bad if you have a dead couch surfer on your record, probably.
You don't want that on your conscience. So even here, there are places that I tell people not to not go, because I don't think that Miami have no-go zones anymore. But there are places where I tell them, well, if you go to that neighborhood, you don't want to leave your car parked and go into the club, the bar or something. Like there are places here where they have an M16 at the behind the counter at the gas station. So it's not that something is going to happen to them, but they may lose their property, or they may be very inconvenienced, or they may be very aggravated by something happening. Like I remember having couch surfers here that I told them, don't go to the beach at night. They were going to South Beach. So don't go to the beach at night. Don't go there. Don't go there at night. Don't go there. And they went there, and then they got robbed. And then they came back and said, well, I told you so doesn't quite say it. Oh my God, we just wanted to take a look. I said, I told you don't go. But because it's a tourist, a traveler, will often, and I like to separate those two words, a traveler often looks like a tourist, so he's a target. I have a friend that she had some very bad incidents in Rio, and I told her, and I don't know if she didn't follow my advice or if things just happened, but she had a couple of very bad incidents there, and I told her, I can if I see you from half a mile away, I can tell that's a target, because you look like a tourist. You're tall, European, tall and blonde.
Yeah, it's
in
hard
Rio.
to avoid.
Come on. Yeah, it's
quite obvious.
Among 200 people, they will pick you.
Yeah,
for sure, they will pick on you. Very interesting situation when you go to a country where you don't understand the language, so you don't know, because you don't know the customs of that country.
Yeah, and a lot of the time,
you may not be able to see that a situation is brewing, and that things are going in a certain direction.
Yeah, and I guess also a lot of the time, once you realize that, even though you are being quite careful, once it gets to that point where you can actually notice it, sometimes I guess it's simply too late. So
I talked to a couchsurfing host in Rio, and he told me of a couple of guys from somewhere, probably in Europe, that went to visit, and they rented a car, and they were visiting a different part of the city, and they put on the GPS the address, his address, and to go back at night. And the GPS doesn't have an option that says, keep me out of the war zones. So the GPS took them straight through one of the favelas, and they got robbed. They lost the car. They nearly got killed. It was a mess. It was a mess because they went through a super dangerous part of the city. So
and I guess especially Rio must be pretty bad.
Rio today is competing for the title of the most dangerous city in the world. It keeps being Rio and Johannesburg. It's those two are really trading places all the time.
Yeah, but aside from not getting murdered, there are obviously a lot of other advantages to couchsurfing as well.
Yeah, there is a lot more. I think that I can look at my own life and I see not just, and I'm not talking just about the website Couchsurfing, of which I have a much more positive view today than I used to have a year ago.
Yeah, I meant the couchsurfing as a concept.
I really like the what the website has done and is going to do. But I'm also talking about the act of couchsurfing and the social movement that it is. Just looking at my life, most of my friends today I met traveling. Most of the personal relationships that I had, the more interesting relationships that I had, were consequence of traveling. The experiences that I had over the last 10 years or so are, my life during the last 10 years is more intense and more interesting than everything that happened before since birth. And I was thinking before discovering couchsurfing, I visited like 5 countries or 6. I'm at around 40 now. And by being at around 40 countries, that means that I know about 2/3 of the world that I want to know. Because I was making one day I made a rough count of all the countries that I want to visit, and it's about 60. No, I don't want to visit many. So I know about 2/3 of the world that I want to know at this point in my life. My opinion may change later, and I may want to visit others, but right now it's around 60.
And I was thinking about, I think lastly today or yesterday, just why I really like traveling, because I mean on the surface it does look like a very simple question, because you experience new things all the time and it's kind of carefree, but I came to the conclusion that I think one of the main reasons is that it forces you to kind of redefine who you want to be every single day in a way that you don't really do back home. And I think couchsurfing is a way to do that, because you constantly you spend enough time with new people, you meet someone for long enough that you have to actually establish your personality with that person, if that makes any sense. You have to I mean, you choose what you want to talk about, you choose what you want to how you want to describe yourself with that person, and constantly being forced to question, okay, who am I and what do I want to be? I think that's a very, very healthy thing to be exposed to, especially when you have to do it over and over and over again for an extended period of time. And that's why I really like traveling.
It does change your personality. I think that we sample other people's lifestyle, and we end up adopting the parts that we like, and that starts shaping our personality. So if you travel for a long time, you don't come back the same person. That there are things that you will improve, and I think that in most of these cases, those changes are improvements. People rarely change traveling for worse. It's usually great, and you come back with, if not with a new language to your repertoire, at least it's going to be some good chunks of new languages, and you will come back with a much more connected view of other places and other countries. I like to say that if Americans had this custom that the Germans have, that when they finish high school before college, they pretty much, it's not just very acceptable, but it's very expected that they have to travel for a year, right, before getting to university. And even their military service, they can do a year doing volunteering anywhere. It's very flexible how they can do it. And I met some of them volunteering here, helping people here in the US, which was mind-boggling to me. I thought, wow, these kids are coming here to help us.
Yeah.
Sometimes in things that we are not helping us enough. If we did, we wouldn't need anybody visiting for that, right? So it's beautiful that they are doing this, but it gives them a more open view of the world. And if people had to do it, if there was a cultural mandate for that, or attitude towards war, and or the way we see politics would drastically change, because you cannot bomb people you know. You can only bomb people that you don't know, that they are just numbers, they're just statistics. Oh yeah, 150,000 people die in Iraq. Nobody gives a rat's ass. Nobody gives a shit, except those people that have been there. They know people, and once you know them, you understand why the cost of war is so high. If you've never been there, it's just numbers. 150,000 people is just a number. It doesn't matter.
That is kind of sad, though, that we need that personal connection to make it real.
But I think that the way we do it in the modern world is that, because before it wasn't necessary. Up to the 19th century, there was not much you could do to another country, to a distant country. There were no weapons that could reach it. It was only in the 20th century that we created weapons that can go to the other side of the world and cause destruction. So now that creates the need for a lot more travel to compensate for that. Because if a lot of the population visits a lot of places, it changes. Everything changes. The same way that you gradually change your personality by meeting people in other countries. A country changes its personality by its population visiting other places.
Yeah, definitely.
They become more careful, more tolerant, more compassionate, for sure. Their music choices change. The way they look at technology, the way they choose things to do or how to invest money, all of it has an impact. And all of those changes are for better.
Yeah, I think most of them anyway. And I think that as far as privilege goes, there are a lot of aspects of that. And I think one very important privilege that, Sweden and, like you said, Germany has is definitely this social acceptance of not being productive for all of your life. For instance, going traveling for several months is not considered to be bad or irresponsible in a way that I think it is in a lot of places around the world. And to some extent, of course, that is tied to the economic situation, because if you have a family to support, obviously you can't go traveling for a few months. But I think there's a deeper aspect that's very psychological also, and just having grown up in a society where it's not considered shameful to try to discover more of yourself. I think that's one of the greatest advantages that I've grown up with, aside from obviously the monetary means to travel quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful about having that in Sweden.
I find Europeans very interesting about that, how they find it natural and interesting, how open-minded they are about traveling for long periods. So common. You go to the hostels everywhere, hostels in Brazil, hostels here, hostels everywhere.
Full of Germans.
Half of them are Germans. German kids backpacking.
Yeah.
It's half of the guests at the hostels. So I admire that so much. I really wish there were more American kids doing that. If you go to El Camino de Santiago in Spain, because of the movie The Way, now there are a lot of Americans. I think that about maybe 1/3 of the pilgrims or Americans.
I imagine the religious aspect must be pretty important there also, because you have a lot of
I would say
Catholics
it's predominant, of the Americans that I talked to, all of them were Christians.
Yeah.
But in El Camino, even though a lot of the people doing it are religious, and a lot of the places that you're visiting are going through have all these religious connections and stories, and and all these churches, and a lot of the hostels are even run by the churches. But religion is not thrown in your face all the time. Like you can go through the entire Camino experience without even talking about religion. You can completely ignore it, and nobody bothers you. Nobody's pushing you to do this or that, or not even inviting. It's just there, and you go if you want. And because it's right there, it's attractive if you are religious. But if you are not, you don't feel that religion is on your way. That's the feeling that wasn't there. Religion doesn't get on your way.
Might that have something to do with the position of the church in Europe currently compared to a lot of other places? I mean, it has had to kind of scale it back, quite a bit the past few years.
Maybe that, or also maybe the fact that the pilgrims, because a lot of them are religious, they naturally go from church to church, and they visit the places, and but when you go there and you are talking to other pilgrims, I would say I don't even remember being annoyed by it. I was annoyed by other things, not by religion at all. Going through the South in US, walking through the South like I did twice, I was more confronted by religion in US than in Europe. I was more confronted by religion in US among the general population than in Spain in the pilgrimage. Because here people were a little less shy about not just asking what is your religiosity, but they also don't feel shy about telling how much they disapprove of it. But of course it's not enough, that it doesn't happen enough that it will make your trip unpleasant. No, I don't want to give people that stereotype. It's not the case.
It is definitely more prevalent.
But people will talk to you. They will ask, in especially like places like Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana. But at the same time, the South, with all its problems, I can make a list of hundreds of really bad problems they have. At the same time, they are incredibly gentle, friendly, and that compensates for a lot of things. They are so nice.
Yeah, but that seems to be the case in a lot of places I've found, and I can't remember where I heard it. It's not my idea anyway, but that kind of conservatism and liberalism, unfortunately, I mean, if you're geared more towards the liberal mindset, more progressive, like I would say I am, it's kind of sad to see that many places that are more liberal, cities or countries, they tend to be less hospitable than more conservative countries. So for instance, if you go to very Catholic places, then you receive an incredible hospitality. Or like taking the US as an example, I've found that in the South, people, just gross generalizations, but people tend to be more hospitable than more liberal places like the West Coast. And I think there's probably something inherent in.
I think that it happens because the cities tend to be more liberal, the country tends to be more conservative, right? In US at least. And in the cities, in the country, if someone sees you on the side of the road, they will stop. Because they are used to it in the country. It's not because they are conservative. It's because it's country.
Yeah,
like
but I've also found
in the desert,
in cities.
if you are walking in the desert, a lot of people stop, a lot of them, because they consider that is another person, maybe needing assistance, and people will stop it. But I think that they do it because they are not in a city. If they see you in a city, people have to be a little more defensive and careful because it's a city. And most of the liberal minds end up concentrating in the city. In US, it's very clear. You look at the liberal versus conservative map, it's right on the edges. Liberal states and a little bit around the Great Lakes. But all this mass of land in the middle that is considered super conservative, it's all country. They will stop and ask if you need, but that's because it's country.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I agree on that. It's definitely part of it, but I've also found it to be the case in terms of countries and also bigger cities in conservative areas like Texas, for instance. But I think maybe there's something inherent in, having a more well-defined group both includes excluding some people, but also more clearly including other people, whereas a more progressive attitude where everyone is kind of belonging to the group also means that no one is, meaning that you don't have the sense of like natural belonging to anyone.
Yeah, that has to be part of it, and also the fact that it's a lot more homogeneous. When you go to the middle of the U.S., it's very very homogeneous. You go or if you go to a place like New Hampshire, New Hampshire is 97% white. It looks like Montreal.
Looks like Sweden, or
it looks like Sweden.
At least parts of Sweden.
Yeah, Sweden is New Hampshire with an average of 15 pounds less. It's something like that.
It's kind of flattering in some ways, anyway.
Yeah, but those factors are important. But I really think that there are more differences between city and country than there are differences between liberal and conservative in behavior. When you start drinking beer with people and talking to them and they get into politics, then that's a horror show, because I really avoid that during trips, during travels, because I think that in many situations that are social, like we will go to a bar in a city that you don't know, I think it's a very poor utilization of time to talk about politics. You rarely change anybody's opinion, you rarely change it anyway, and even if someone is really smart, that's not the forum, because you don't have a lot of time to talk about things. It's not like a 3-hour podcast in which you can make your case, you can explain your reasons, and then we can question the basis of them, and we can go deeper if necessary into the presumptions that you're and the presuppositions of it. You have the time. When you are at the bar, you don't have that time. You have too many distractions and too many drinks, and you are not going to go deep enough to really understand the point of view of someone.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting question, actually, because it has struck me as well how incredibly rare it is for us to discuss politics in general, even though, politics is almost by definition something that needs to be discussed a lot, because it's based on values that need to be kind of twisted and turned. But at least where I'm from, I don't really experience that people talk about politics at work, because that's considered kind of bad taste. Not really with their families either, and I guess quite rarely with their friends. So really the field of politics where there should be the most discussion in society, you have hardly any discussion whatsoever, but people rather just stick to the values that they've kind of gotten. And I guess to a varying...
Oh man, I'm moving to Sweden. I'm so annoyed here.
Are people discuss politics too much here?
No, I'm annoyed that they don't have the instruments to do it well. They are not used to logic. They are not used to having a discussion in slow speed and going through the arguments carefully and being open-minded enough to examine someone else's point of view in a careful manner. In America, people do it by sound bites. When you watch two people discussing politics, they are trading sound bites. And I think that's worse than masturbation. At masturbation, at least you'll have a little bit to show for it at the end. In that kind of discussion, nobody moves, nobody learns anything. It's like watching CNN. You can watch any 30 minutes of CNN and you get the news that, at least you get to know what it is that other people are watching. So you get a view of what it is that is concerning most people, even though it's probably useful news useless news in terms of the utility or how much it matters. But at least you get a clue of what the others are watching. After that 30 minutes, it's just going to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat for the next 17 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours. Until something else big happens, they will just keep repeating the same set of news. And then watching the same news several times, the only benefit, the only result, the only consequence is that it's going to make you more paranoid. So whatever it is, the news, if it concerns you a little bit, after watching it 21 times, it's going to concern you a lot, even though it was irrelevant to your life before, right? So I think that CNN is, and not just CNN, almost all news is a horrible waste of time. I don't watch it at all. I just skip the entire thing. I just watch, like, if someone says something on Facebook or sometimes I want to study or learn something that may be in the current news, I'll go and check. Like the other day, I saw a comment on Twitter about, because I follow a few channels on Twitter now, and someone posted about the Australia installing batteries and Tesla is going to do the deal and all and I follow Tesla a lot. I said, okay, so I'm going to look at it, and then I end up checking the news and I found it there too. So fine, it's just another source. But I don't open CNN or turn CNN on TV just to watch it, or MSNBC or BBC or anything.
No, but
I totally skip it, and it doesn't affect my life at all.
No.
Like nothing. There is nothing that I don't know because I don't watch news. There is nothing that I cannot argue properly by not following news. It's completely useless information. In
some ways, I figure it's kind of appealing and satisfying to know what's going on, and I guess it's called Zeitgeist in German, and that really is mainly what it's about, just some kind of enjoyment.
It is entertainment. If you look at what they choose to post, okay, I remember the day that I stopped watching CNN. It was a day that I bet that a lot of things, important things are happening in the world. And they had an article about some completely pointless thing, like in what countries people have the bigger dicks or something. It was something completely pointless. And it was not on the headlines, but it was like half page down on the website. And I thought, CNN thinks that this is relevant. This is such a waste of time. It's a disrespect to my intelligence. It's an insult. To think that I want to watch this kind of shit. So why do I want to watch it? No, I don't. So I stopped watching. I stopped following it at all. Now, I follow something when I have a prior interest to that. But then I think it's easier to follow it on Twitter, and then you click on the links when it matters. So it's because Twitter makes it so easy to filter it and to go only through the channels that you care and filter out everything else. Even better than much better than Facebook, for sure.
Yeah.
But even better than like Yahoo News. I tried Yahoo News once, and you select by areas of interest and what you want to watch. And even after filtering a lot, it still got a lot of junk. I said, no, okay, forget it. I'm not going to use it.
Yeah, because I'm kind of torn on that aspect, because on one hand, I guess I imagine anyway that it's developing to constantly be faced with new material that you're not really used to reading. But on the other hand, I do really realize that so much of the news that I consume, even the stuff that would be considered respectable and important on an international scale, it doesn't really affect me or my decisions at all. Like we discussed yesterday, like even the news today, for instance, or the past week, about nuclear war threatening between the US and North Korea, which seems on the surface to be incredibly irrelevant because we're talking about the apocalypse. It doesn't really affect my life whatsoever. It might affect my mood after I've read that the next 10 minutes, but it doesn't really affect the world I'm looking at or the decisions that I make. Whereas, like I told you, like maybe a few years ago, I read a news story about how it was National Cinnabon Day in Sweden, and that meant that they had Cinnabons for half price in my cafeteria. And honestly, that has affected my life a lot more.
That had an effect, yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of news story is just... I mean, it's pointless, but that story affected me more than probably anything else that I've read.
You know what troubles me the most?
Yeah.
Sometimes I read articles about how someone misinterpreted something and posted on a blog, for instance, or in a... It happens a lot, especially like in renewables, in electric cars, and that those technology areas, in computing or in AI, people that have no clue what they are writing. They post something on a blog, and some journalist picks it up and copy and paste, or puts a link and post it, and then all the other news outlets also copy and paste, and everybody it becomes a resonance box that the same thing goes in every direction, right? And then you read about it and you look into under the surface and you see that it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
And in technology, it's all the fucking time, and sometimes things that are fucking relevant, like I remember once that I read this article about efficiency and how the grid deals with the efficiency and the loads that come from solar panels in residential areas and all that. And one of the links to it was on a news, one of these news sites, that the headline was about the war between Elon Musk and whatever the name of this billionaire. And if the headline framed as if they are on different sides of the equation, and they were completely conflicting because Elon Musk was one of the main guys in Solar City, and Solar City wanted to sell in Nevada, and that measure that was going to be voted into, to change the law or not, would have a deep impact financially on Solar City. And the other guy, he owns part of the utility company that wanted the law changed. But then when I read the technical and the economic analysis of why it is that they want to change the law, I end up finding that, the change actually makes sense. But you need to read and understand a little bit of how electric systems work, and how the utilities have to process the differences in load, and how people are using it in the state of Nevada, how they are using the grid as their battery. And I would side with the other side. And then one day I watched a video of Elon Musk talking about the way that conflict happens. And actually, Elon Musk agrees. It's not a matter of political philosophy, it's a matter of technical issues and economics. He actually agrees with the other side. Basically, to correct the systems, you cannot just put solar. You need to put solar and storage. Solar and storage have to be together. But a lot of people installed their solar systems before storage actually existed at any reasonable price. So that's why the problem exists. And then in Florida, they had the same vote last year on how to change net metering, on changing or not. And the utility companies were on the side of changing, and everybody was copying and sharing the links on Facebook. And the headline was always a variation of, these guys are against solar panels. They are against the adoption of renewable energy. But if people understood economics and how things actually work, they would say that's not really the case. So when you look at the news, many times you have to, it's not even enough to read it. Definitely not enough to watch it on TV, but it's not enough to read it. You have to even do some research to understand the issue. And when many times I see things on that people were talking about that are on the news, and I look at the headline and I think, this can be something completely different. The headline can be so totally misleading. And one day I remember someone posted some news on Facebook that said, South Korea says that they're going to do this and this and this and this. And then I was thinking, South Korea says, that is a weird phrase. Because South Korea doesn't say anything. It's not a person. So who said it? So if someone said it, who was that? Kim Jong whatever? Was it the Ding Dong Hun there, or was it someone at the White House that said that? Was it a politician that said it to the news, to a news outlet, and the news outlet put it out? I don't know. To me, it's very possible that during this entire last 6 months, South Korea or North Korea didn't say anything. It can be completely fabricated, the entire story, because the moment that one says one thing, everybody else copies it. Everybody else follows. There is no verification. First of all, because there is no way to verify anything anyway. What I see is that right this week, US closed deals with Japan and China to sell more weapons to those countries and to South Korea. That is verifiable. That there was a lot more money flowing in that direction, in this direction, and a lot more weapons flowing in that direction. If the threat is real or not, I have no idea. So, to be clear, I have no idea that the North Korea threat is real. I also have no way to verify that it's not real. And the sources of information about it, I absolutely don't trust.
But isn't that somehow a slightly different question of whether or not to trust the news? And I agree that in a lot of aspects of North Korea, it is very hard to get reliable information because, well, I went there a few years ago, and a lot of the like crazy news stories that you get are actually derived, at least in part, from South Korean propaganda.
I also compare a lot with Ukraine. I go to Ukraine a lot. I spent a year there. If you are in Ukraine and you look at the news about Ukraine, you think they're talking about a different country. It doesn't match. It doesn't match the way people are thinking there about it, the way what they are concerned about, and what they are not concerned. Nothing matches. It's like it has a vague resemblance of what it is and what the problems are, but nothing matches. Where it comes to Russia, where it comes to things that happen, I don't know. So, and because I trust the news media so little, and I trust the government so nothing, it doesn't help me at all. I thought, okay. I prefer to be uninformed than to be misinformed. I think uninformed is easier to live with. Just don't know it. Like, I'll give you a practical example, because all those things, they have practical implications. If they affect the way you live. For instance, if you followed last year the news closely, you wouldn't go to Europe. Okay, it was too scary. It was one thing after another, and a bombing here and shooting there and truck here and craziness there. But if you are traveling through, you don't see any of it. There is a difference between what is happening and what it is possible that you are going to see. You have to take into account the proportionality of things.
Absolutely.
And the news doesn't have any proportionality. When they post the news about someone that got bit by a shark, they don't spend any time explaining to you that it's much easier for you to get hit by lightning playing golf than get bit by a shark. It doesn't show that it's a very predictable thing, and it's so rare. It doesn't explain that it's much easier to win the lottery than to witness a terror attack. So even though those things are meaningful, I'm not saying that they are not meaningful. What I'm saying is that if you watch that all day, 20 times a day, like most people do, a lot of people here have the TV on all the time, it's going to give you the impression that certain things are dangerous when they are not, that certain things are unreasonable when they are not. At some point, people, I got messages from friends saying, "Are you sure you want to go to France around now?" I said, "Motherfucker, nothing's going to happen. Even if it happens, it's not going to happen to me. The chances are too low. I'm not going to stop." Or like, I remember someone saying, but there are, Islamic fundamentalists and ISIS and this and all that, they are attacking everywhere. I said, look, I am more likely to be killed by their drivers. And by that I mean the French drivers. Okay? A French driver is much more likely to kill me than a terrorist. That's where I should put my focus. Doesn't mean that the terrorists, that this doesn't matter. But I'm not going to honor the terrorists' work by giving more attention than it deserves.
But isn't that big? Because I completely agree with that, and I would say that it's kind of inherent in what news is, that it focuses on those things that cause a psychological reaction. In that sense, it is to a large degree entertainment, because I mean the attacks that they report on are, of course, they are true. So it's not like news is false. It's just that
in that kind of thing, yes, it's true. But when they say South Korea says this, I have no idea. Right?
Then it's probably a bit more sketchy. But what was my point? Yeah, so it's definitely true, but you do need to put it into a context that maybe the news it's too constant a stream of new information to really provide the context in how you should interpret the new events.
Yeah. Also, we just now, the last 15 minutes, we focused on political things.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that is in the news is not even about politics. And I'll give you one interesting example. There was this actress that she apparently had some argument or some fall down with. She was married to Johnny Depp, and she accused him of beating her up or something like that. I don't know exactly what she accused because I don't watch the news, so I don't know. But I watched a blog because I follow certain, not blog, a podcast. I follow certain podcasts. And there was this podcast where the guys were were discussing the fact that she accused Johnny Depp of domestic violence, and all the news media and all the tabloids and all the idiots, they follow on her word. That's before anybody knew if it was true or not. If it was before he went to court and was found guilty. So this guy had his reputation attacked only on some allegation of someone that has a pretty good story to tell. But from every source of people that because the guy that was talking about it, he called another podcaster that knows Johnny Depp, that is a friend, and the guy said, we talk about it, and it's all bullshit. All this entire story is bullshit. I'm not saying that he did or that he did not do it. What I'm saying is that accusing him of doing it is irresponsible. Every time, the other year, I would say, going to say the other day, but no, I think this story is about 2 years ago, that this girl accused a bunch of guys in a university of raping her, and there were not just accusations, there were guys getting expelled from college because of it. There were people getting arrested. There were people getting accused and judged and convicted on popular opinion of being a rapist, which is a freaking felony, right? And then weeks later, when she recanted the entire story and she told that it was all invented and all that, and they had their criminal records cleared, right? But the same media that spent hours accusing them and basically cheating on their reputation didn't spend a single minute to do the other way around. And also, this is very interesting. A guy gets accused of rape, he's going to be all over the news, right? Especially a student in an Ivy League school. He's going to be all over the news. He's going to lose his friends. It's going to be horrible, all right? It's horrible to the point that sometimes guys that this happens commit suicide, right? It's terrible. And the media will spend a lot of time burying them. But the same media will basically just put a little note condemning the girl that lied. You understand, her crime is also a felony. In a lot of these cases, the girl ends up going to jail because if the Attorney General has any sense, because she just created a situation that could curtail the freedoms of a person, of a citizen. You just nearly put a guy in jail. You ruin his life.
And that's, of course,
and that would take a lot of media. But her act of lying and then admitting on it and then going to jail for it barely gets a note on the newspaper. So since I started noticing this kind of things and noticing how if you refuse to recycle, whatever, you dump a carton of milk on the side of the road, you end up on the news. But the companies that destroy a lot of the environment, sometimes they don't get any. They don't get any coverage, and because they are doing it very often legally and very often subsidized. So the treatment, the proportionality of things is bizarre. Many things. I remember there were during these last few years, there were 11 cases. We know the number because someone counted. There were 11 cases of Teslas that after a crash, they burst on fire. because of the batteries, right? And in all those cases, the fire took at least 15 minutes to happen. It never happens right at the moment of the crash, right? And the number of gasoline, and each one of them made national news. Each one, all 11. So 11 times it happens, 11 times it made national news. But the hundreds of gasoline cars that burn instantly, because if there is a leak and it burns, it starts right away, right? Many times burning the occupants together. Very serious fire. They made national news exactly once. That once was when Paul Walker died. That made national news, but that's not because it was a fire, it's because it was Paul Walker. Okay.
And I guess it just shows the inherent seeking for things out of the ordinary news, kind of the being afraid of the new things. But just really briefly, I do think I need to comment on the sexual violence aspect, and I completely see your point, and it's horrible being accused for a crime that vicious when you're innocent. And I think it's so problematic just because it is kind of inherently a crime that doesn't really have too much evidence in it, and also a crime that goes way underreported.
Exactly.
So I mean, obviously,
that's the other side of the problem.
And I guess that's why the media really jumps on it at least once in a while, just because you do really want to shame people who have committed such crimes, but no one really deserves to be judged in
wait a minute.
Public opinion.
But wait a minute. In certain things, the media in general has very strong bias. The media has very strong bias against renewables. It's so easy to track. So easy to track. Like they talk about the subsidies and they write editorials about the subsidies for renewables without mentioning the subsidies that oil industry gets. That's not an accident.
No, that's probably
it's not an accident, because if you are writing a thing about economy and about investment and about the industry and all that, and you completely ignore the other side of the equation, that is either incompetence or it's bias. In that case, it's malicious. It cannot be either one, anything else. It can't, by definition, right? And the media has a bias against men. At least in US, it's evident.
I think sometimes
it's evident.
But I think the main issue is that people should not be judged in the court of public opinion at all.
For anything, yeah.
But I really do hope that.
I really like a case. I will illustrate that with a different kind of case, because the media has a bias against prostitution. And this case was so interesting. There was an escort agency, which is a prostitution business in New York, that they got busted by the cops, and the owner, she was on the headlines, and she was accused of all kinds of things, and the Attorney General in New York, her name is Sidney Brill Barrows. Very interesting case in the late 80s, and she was completely attacked by all the media, especially by the conservative media, but all the media attacked her, and the politicians were jumping on it, and everybody was condemning her. And then it was a tough situation, and her attorney. The Attorney General, the police confiscated a book that had the list of all the clients, and they didn't bring that into evidence in the case. And then her attorney saw that it was on the list of things that were apprehended during the arrest, but the Attorney General didn't bring that into evidence. So when it was the time to choose the jury, her attorney entered a motion that they wanted a motion that would force the prosecution to add the book as evidence, because they said we need to read the names of the clients Because if a juror is a friend or connected to a client, he has a conflict of interest, and then we have to dismiss the jury. That argument was so strong that the judge could not refuse it. And then the prosecution decided to dismiss the case. Why? Because there were a lot of politicians in that list. The politicians didn't have any problem with calling her a whore on TV. But then, when they were faced with the possibility that their names could be, and actually her attorney someone leaked a page of the book and they posted, and there were some politicians there, and they went to no, that wasn't me, someone else with the same name, apparently also with the same phone number, someone with the same name. You know what happened to innocent until proven guilty? And she wrote on her book, what happened to innocent until proven guilty? You didn't give me that privilege, you fucker. Right? And it's the same thing everywhere. In Florida, you can go to any gas station right now. You can get out of the door, go to a gas station, and you buy a little magazine that has the photos and the arrest records for everybody that got arrested in South Florida. It's statewide, usually, the book. Everything that was arrested, listed per county, let's say during the last 30 days or the last 60 days. Here, the arrest records are public record, just pretty much like everywhere.
Records as well.
Arrest record.
Wow.
And it has a disclaimer in front of the magazine that says, disclaimer, all of them are innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yeah, like cops.
But yeah, they are putting your fucking face and your name and your city in a magazine that is open to the public. That has consequences. It's fucking you up before you had your day in court. The definition is super clear. It's until proven guilty. To me, it's bizarre.
Yeah,
it's beyond absurd that you can fuck people this way in America. I think that everybody, including the terrorists, including the politician, including everybody, until you're found guilty, the name should not be out.
Yeah, definitely. We had a big controversy.
And I'm not saying that because I want to protect the politician.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because I want to protect me. If I am incorrectly accused, I want to be protected until I have a chance to defend myself.
Yeah. And we even had a big controversy in Sweden about publishing names of people who were actually convicted, so luckily we're at least one step later on.
I want to move to Sweden. Yeah, you know, it's basically respect for people. I'm not saying don't prosecute, I'm not saying don't investigate, I'm not saying don't go ahead with the case, absolutely. But accusing and convicting people on TV should be a crime. I'm not saying that they shouldn't talk about the crime. I'm not saying that I'm not infringing on the First Amendment. What I'm saying is that if you are talking about someone, accusing them of something, it's much more than speech. It's causing actual damage.
I guess it should fall under libel, no?
Which is a very strong legal concept in a lot of countries, but not here.
No? Oh.
No, well, it happens, but it's not nearly as easy. I mean, what are the chances of Joe Blow getting arrested and then later the cops admitting that they did wrong, that they didn't read his rights correctly, or they didn't investigate things right, and then they notice that, oh shit, we got the wrong guy. No, and then they admit that it was all wrong and things get removed. But now a lot of people are not going to talk to him anymore. You know that there is a lot of consequences. What are the chances? What are the chances? No, but here's the point. If you are a rich person, things are different. But what are the chances that Joe Blow is going to be able to sue anybody for that. Zero. Okay. I got detained at an airport once, in Boston airport, by a mistake of an airline employee. Okay. Took some 3 hours to clear that. Okay. They called Department of Defense at DOD because they have their soldiers there, and they called Homeland Security, and then they called a bunch of people. All right. And then the guys from DOD said no, but this is after being there for a couple hours already.
How does that work, by the way? Do you get a new flight ticket from the DOD? Or?
No, I didn't get shit.
But you missed your flight, I guess?
I missed my flight. The only thing the airline did was they booked me on the next flight, which was next day. So I had to fly next day. Okay, but at some point, I was already at the point of not talking because I thought this may end up in court. So I better not talk. You know who I could sue for that? Nobody. Because the law is written in such a way that even if the airline makes a mistake, even if the mistake is because the employee was ignorant of the law and biased against me, even then, they still cannot be sued. There is no way that I can sue the airline. And no way that I can sue the state police officer that also didn't know the rules. Okay. Well, I'll tell about the case. I was clear, so I have no problem. I was going to fly to Florida, and I was checking in a firearm. And you have to. There is a procedure how to do it. There is a way that you have to put that in a case and lock it, and there are several rules that are published by the TSA. The employee from the airline didn't know the rules. She was not a new employee. She was old, but apparently they don't do that very often. Apparently she never had to do that herself, or she didn't like me. I don't care. I don't know what it is. But instead of following the procedure, she pressed the button, state police comes up.
Right.
And
it's kind of a decent anecdote anyway.
It's a good story. And the cop didn't know the rules himself. So he said, no, you cannot have it. I said, sir, I even carry, I have a copy of the fucking instructions from the TSA. I said, as it says on the instructions, he didn't want to look at it. He didn't want to take it. And then he said, no, but you cannot. He said, do you have a license for this? I said, I happen to have a license, even though according to the rules, I don't need the license. But I'll show it to you anyway. And then I show him my license. And he looked at it and said, this is not a Massachusetts license to have a firearm. Of course not. I was a resident of New Hampshire, but it was a non-resident Massachusetts license. So it says in the fucking paper, non-resident license to carry a firearm. It is printed by the state police, of which he is an officer, and apparently he never saw one.
Interesting. But what kind did you have?
So
was
not
it
just
bazooka
he did a regular firearm, or just a pistol. Not just he didn't know the rules. He didn't want to look at my copy of it. He didn't want to look at another copy that is printed on the side of the counter. If you go to any airport, tomorrow you're going to fly out, you're going to see that they put a little placard on the side next to the scale. There is a thing that says TSA rules. If you are checking in a firearm, you have to do this. It is printed there. He was standing in front of it. He still didn't want to let me check in. He didn't want to say anything. He didn't want to correct her. And he got really serious with me. And at some point he said, no, shut up. I'm not asking you anything yet. I thought, okay, fuck, I got this kind of cup now. So then I waited. And then he said, I would just book you right now, but because we are in the airport, I should call Homeland Security first. But Homeland Security is busy. Took about an hour. I was there sitting on the back room with a cup for about an hour until a guy from Homeland Security with all the gear and the radios and the machine gun and everything showed up, right? And said, what's going on? and said, well, this guy was checking in like this, like this, like that. The Homeland Security guy, which is the Department of Defense, he says DOD on his badge. He literally did this. He said, do you see this? Because there is a placard right there on the fucking wall. He said, do you see this? Did he put that on a rigid case? The guy said, yes. Did he ask for the form? The girl said, yes. Was it locked? Yes. Does he have any ID? Yes. So why the fuck did you guys call me? And he left. And now the cop said, okay, I'm getting out. And then the girl said, the girl asked me, she looked at me in the face, she said, why do you want to carry a gun anyway? Why do you have it for? I said, I am not going to even give you the respect of an answer now, because you're too stupid to be here. I told her, and I'm leaving. And then I said, and you better book me to the next flight. They booked me to the next flight. But there was one consequence. I couldn't sue anybody. But I wrote a very nice letter to the director of security and operations at Continental Airlines. Continental Airlines, just in case you are wondering, okay? Don't fly, it's fucked. So I wrote a very nice, interesting letter where I explained the situation and I told everything that happened, and I point at the mistakes in. I couldn't do anything about state police, doesn't matter. The guy was stupid, he was still stupid today probably. But I wrote this letter, and I had a friend that she worked at Continental. So she was following the case for me. She was like getting what is that was happening, and the two girls that were working at the counter that day got fired.
Because of that. Because
they ignore they didn't know the procedure that is part of their training, and they willingly they didn't check, they didn't double check, they didn't once I told them it's the rule and this is it and it's TSA, they refused to check, and they still called the cop, and then they still insisted on their mistake, and it was such an egregious violation of procedure that they got fired. And my friend told me that like it took like about 2 months, but
so you avoid Continental now, or
I avoid. If I'm booking my flight and it has Continental, it's not the only airline that I avoid. There are a bunch of crazy. Most airlines that I avoid is just because they're too crappy, you know. But I think that being crappy is an acceptable mistake. You know that they are crappy because they're the cheapest ones, all right? I think that being crappy is at least an honest mistake. You can be crappy and be honest, okay? But ignoring procedure and fucking people up and embarrassing them and making them lose their flight and calling the cops on them, that's not just an honest mistake. That's ignorance. That's probably bias on her part. You know, against guns, one of those people that cannot see it, that thinks that everybody that has a gun is a criminal, you know, and her attitude was so negative, it was so vile, you know, you can see through the attitude. The moment that I said that I wanted to check a firearm, her demeanor changed. I don't know what it is, the tragedy in her life, or what it is in her politics, or what it is in her personal experience, who knows, maybe I feel sorry for her that she has that emotional baggage on her past. It's probably out of trauma. Okay, but I don't want her working a fucking airline and fucking everybody that comes in checking in a firearm. You know, that you don't want that people. You know, I am sorry for her personal problem. You know, I wish she gets better. But I don't want her working in an airport. You know, you don't want that kind. And I wish there was a way that I could report on that cop. But I have an attorney there that I would have called him. So I had a conversation with him just on the phone about it, and he said, no, don't waste your time with state police. It's not going to go anywhere. You can You can write a complaint, nothing will happen. Because he didn't violate protocol exactly. He was ignorant. At the most, they would tell him, okay, go 1 hour back to the academy and learn that bit. You know, that would be the only.
Go sit in the corner.
The only consequence. There would be no remedy towards that. And I definitely could not sue anybody. Not at all. Yeah. And I had other situations in which I saw clear bias. But even though people had a bad attitude, they had the bias and all that, at least they followed the correct procedures. So I have nothing to complain there, really. You know, if at least they follow the rules, I'm okay with it.
And I guess in general, like you might be okay with people making mistakes as long as they're able to correct them.
Able to correct, or at least if it was something that doesn't cross the line of not even wanting to hear you and not even want to double check if they are actually correct. You see, those 2 girls lost their job, but her supervisor that looked at the entire situation and did nothing to correct it, in my opinion, she should have lost her job too. Because she saw everything, and she's supposed to know it better than the girls at the counter. The girls at the counter could possibly be new at it, or they could possibly be badly trained, you know. I don't think that's the case. I think they are assholes, but there is a possibility that mistake was just out of ignorance. But not in the case of the supervisor. You don't become a supervisor by being clueless about it. You become a supervisor by working on that for a while. It's nearly impossible that she got to the position of being supervisor without ever having to check a firearm. I don't believe it's possible, because people do it all the time.
I guess in general, people are going to make mistakes, but what's really annoying is when someone is not really able to or willing to accept the possibility that they might be wrong and double check whether or not they're
and to me, correct. It's worse when the rules are printed right next to you, 1 meter away from you. There is a fucking rule written.
Yeah, I guess humility is always a very good trait, and being aware of that. I mean, everybody makes mistakes.
But also there are mistakes that are honest but put people in danger. And I made a big fuss once at a Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube is a place here that you go to change the oil. Well, now they sell a lot more services, but at that time, it was a place that you would only go to change the oil, fill up. It used to be simple. Now you go there and they want to sell you 15 different things. It's all bullshit, but they still they still try to sell a bunch of things, but they change the oil. But at that time it was a lot simpler, and they would change the oil, change the fluids, and top up the fluids, see if the lights and the blinkers, everything is on, and they would fill up the tires. Because a lot of people drive around with their tires a little low. Well, I had a minivan at that time, and the minivan had low-profile tires. And the normal tires for that van take like 25 psi, something like that, 25 or 28. But the low-profile tires take 40. And the guy went there, and he looked at the van. I believe that's how it could have happened, because he has a dial where you say how many pounds of pressure to put. So I think he looked at the van, he thought 25, put that 25. And he went with the machine, it does automatically, it fills or reduces the pressure automatically. So he went to each tire and did it. When I got out of it and turned right and got to the first stop sign, I nearly crashed the next car, because the tires were so deflated that it didn't brake properly. The tires, it vibrated and it didn't stop. So I nearly crashed on the car in front of me. And I thought, something is wrong. So I drove around and went back to Jiffy Lube. I went 1 block, and I got out of the car and I look at it. Fuck, the tires are half half empty. So I drove back in. And I said, what happened to the tires? The guy said, oh, I checked the pressure. How much did you put? 25. I called the guy so many names. And he the poor thing, barely understood English. Okay, but I call him asshole, stupid. I call him all kind of things. I said, read the fucking tire. I didn't grab him, but I made him look at this fucking number. It says on the tire, because every tire it says on the tire what is the pressure for it. You know, what does it say here? It says 40. So why did you put 25? I didn't see that they are not original tires. So you look at the tire. You cannot do it without looking. You're in front of it. You can see that it's not a regular tire. I got totally, I don't know, I think they were considering calling the cops on me because I was nearly getting violent on the guy. I said, you nearly made me crash my car. I was telling this story to a friend of mine once. He said, is that what they did to you? Jiffy Lube once forgot to put oil in my car and I drove away and I fucked up the engine. The Jiffy Lube had to give me a new engine. Okay, your business is changing oil.
And you forget to put oil.
You forget to put the oil. You only had one job. You know those Facebook jokes that they put, you only had one job? That was the case. They only had one job. Put oil. They didn't. And clear him out and
but do you
he
still,
left without oil in the car.
Do you still go to Jiffy Lube then?
No, I go to Pennzoil. They're just as likely to fuck it up, but at least I feel that I don't want to give my money to the guys that fucked up so bad once.
Maybe statistically you should even continue going to Jiffy Lube because maybe they've like had their one strike,
no,
so now it's
but statistically, if they want my money, they shouldn't have fucked it up so bad in the first place. So now you're not getting my money again.
But at least you survived. And I learned why it's called Jiffy Lube because I've always kind of wondered because it sounds a bit, honestly it sounds pretty sketchy. Like it sounds a bit I mean, it's not like I'm the first to make that association, but it sounds kind of like a prostitution business.
Look.
You don't think so? No?
Lube, I don't know. More like porn. Maybe a good name for porn. But, you know, they change oils in millions of cars every day, right? I bet they forget to put the oil in maybe once a year out of the millions. So it's not likely that things like that will happen. But now, anywhere I go, even if I go to Pennzoil or anywhere else, I always tell them, don't touch the tires. Don't look at them. Don't change the pressure. I do it all the time. And I got used to, before getting in the car, I always walk around the car. And I always take a look. If a tire looks down, even though now I drive a car that warns you if the pressure goes below a certain point. It has a sensor now. But even with that, just because it became habitual, I always look at the 4 tires before driving.
I guess something positive. And also, like, whenever something inconvenient happens, you always have to weigh it against the value of the anecdote as well. Like, sometimes some inconvenience can be definitely worth, maybe not almost crashing, but a lot of the time it's still kind of worth it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know. Like, there are things that you know are not necessary, but being habitual, even though that information is not true anymore or is not true at the moment, it brings you to an action that is positive one way or another. Like checking your car every time. You know, I always look, I always check. When I turn the lights on and I stop behind a car, I always observe if I can see the reflection of both lights in front of the car, on the back of the car. You know, there are certain things that I do by habit, but also now one thing that I don't like is that when you take your motorcycle to a motorcycle shop to do service, they take it back there to the service area, and you're not watching them do the service. And I prefer to go to places where they do the service right next to it, or you can be watching, even though you are outside of the service area, but you can be looking from a distance, right? And because they usually don't want you to walk in because of liability, you know, in US at least. In Eastern Europe, they don't care. You can even help, you know, they don't mind. But I remember once I went in Munich. Germany has a reputation of having great mechanics, right? So I was very unconcerned. But still, when I got to the shop to change the oil, I said, I would like to watch, you know, and then the guy said, oh, you are not supposed to be inside the service area. I said, look, I like to watch. I don't need to touch it. I'm not going to touch anything, but I want to be here. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. The guy said, okay, you just watch that. And then the guy started doing the service. Old mechanic. I thought, this guy must be good, right? The moment that he was going to remove the dipstick, the dipstick on my motorcycle has a thermometer that tells you the oil temperature. It's not the only motorcycle that has it. A lot of motorcycles. It's a minority, but I saw several already that had it. But if you see something that is unusual, I understand. The dipstick with a thermometer is unusual. Wouldn't you at least take a look like this and look and see how it is? No, you just grab it and twist it to open it. And I said, man, stop, don't do that. You're going to remove the dial. I don't know if it damages it or not, but that's not how the dipstick is going to come out. Because I know you have to remove the base. And it has the threads for the wrench on the base. If you just look at it, you would see the threads. You see the chunk for the wrench. He said, okay. Then he got the thing and started removing the entire thermometer. Comes out with the dipstick, everything is nice, right? And then he opened the oil drain correctly. He took the oil filter after a lot of fight with it, but he removed it. And then he was draining it. And he said, are you sure that it takes 4 liters? I said, it does if you drain it correctly. I said, how so? I said, this bike, you have to put it upright if you want to drain all the oil. If it is on the side stand, there will be 0.1 liter that will stay in because the engine is very wide. I said, it says that on the manual, on the service manual, not on the user manual. On the user manual, it says put 3.9 because 1.1 will be the old oil. But on the service manual, it explains that if you want to drain all the oil, you just bring the bike upright. And I said, okay, then I went to the bike and I held it. And then he drained all the oil. And he didn't want to put 4 liters. He said, no, this has to be 3.5. I said, man, just trust me. Just do what I'm asking you to do. Just put the 4 liters. Okay? I'm buying the 4. I'm not leaving half a liter for you anyway, right? Just put all in. Then he did it. Then he was putting the thing again. He was twisting it too hard. I said, Jesus Christ, man. The guy, I had to check every step that he was doing. You know, I never saw someone so inept.
So you don't trust German mechanics anymore?
No, I trust most of them. But not him. Not that guy.
I can see that.
I had mechanics, especially the recent ones that I had work on my bike in Kiev, that not just they did their service very well, but in some cases they did extra things that I didn't ask for that actually improved the bike, or they warned me of other things that needed repair and showed me why. And they took the part out and showed me where it was, you know, getting to where it was wearing off, for instance. You know, like I went to change the clutch, the guy showed me that also the actuator was getting too worn out, and then we couldn't find one because Honda doesn't sell just that piece of the actuator. You have to buy the entire kit. So he had a friend make a new one for me. The guy had the machine and he cuts a piece of metal and gave it to me for free.
Oh, nice. So you have a Honda then? I was about that.
Yeah, I have a Honda.
So it must be a pretty big brand, no?
Yeah.
Or a big model, I mean.
Yeah, just that model is not very common but it's the same maintenance manual of the Goldwing. So you can just, and Goldwings are everywhere. So if you ever service a Goldwing and know how to service a Valkyrie, just use the same manual. You know, the engine is the same. So I had a lot of mechanics work on this bike in Eastern Europe, and every experience was awesome. The guys really knew what to do, and they were careful, and you could go and work with them if you wanted. No problem. I loved doing service there. I also had a very interesting experience in Austria that I was riding and I got a flat tire, and I went slowly, got into the nearest village, and a guy stopped his car, this Austrian guy, and he looked at the motorcycle, he looked at the license plate, and he came to talk to me in English. And he said, "Oh, you have a big problem there." I said, "Yeah, it's kind of big, yeah." He said, "All right, my company where I work is right here, like 1 block away. Do you think you can bring the bike 1 block?" So yeah, I think so. I already did 3 miles on this flat tire. I can do another block. So I went there, and they tried to help. They tried to put air. They had a compressor. They put air and watch it, and they noticed that it wasn't because of puncture. It's because the valve broke. So the valve was not holding. So he said, "Okay, if you can follow me, I can take you to a place where you can buy a tire." That was a little more complicated than usual because my bike has a car tire in the back. So we went to a store, bought a tire that would fit, and then I followed him. He drove to a Honda shop. And so it's a Honda shop to fix a Honda motorcycle, but they didn't want to put a tire. They said, "It's not a motorcycle tire." The guy, and I kept explaining, and the guy kept translating for me. I said, "Yes, but it's the same tire that I had before. You know, you can see that the tire that it is there now is a car tire. I just want to replace it with another car tire, which is the same model, same measurements. Just change it." "Oh no, but we can't because there is liability and all that." I said, "Look at the odometer. This bike at that time had like 100,000 miles on it." I said, "I have been driving with a car tire for 30,000 miles. Still didn't kill me. You know, can you trust me that nobody is more interested in my safety than I am?" Okay, and you're not replacing a motorcycle tire with a car tire. I would say that it would be a bigger jump of trust. You're just replacing a car tire with another one on the same model. The guy still didn't want to do it. But then I went to my bike and I was playing with the phone, trying to find another Honda dealer in the area, and they kept talking, and I think that the guy convinced them to do it. But then once that convincing was done, the service was awesome. They opened, they took it out, and then they found that one of the bearings was bad, and they showed it to me, but they didn't have a replacement, so they had to order. And this was a Friday. It was only going to arrive on a Monday. They said, "We can do everything else, we can fix it. Monday morning we'll put the bearing in, and you can ride away." And so I spent couple of days.
In a random village in Austria.
In that little village. It was it was now not on the village. It was in St. Pölten. And actually, it turned out that the city was very pleasant. I went to some places, but it was really difficult to convince them to do something that was not in the manual. You know, putting a car tire on the bike was a big jump for them. And
imagine it must be because of some rules that they can.
Yeah, and I get you're putting non-standard equipment. It's not just non-standard. It's not like I'm putting a non-standard exhaust. That a lot of people can accept that because they do it very often. But putting a car tire on the bike, I bet they never did it before. And here, if you go to a dealer, they don't want to do it.
Yeah, I imagine, because if you get into an accident, you can probably sue them.
Someone can sue. The rider probably wouldn't, but if he dies, the family could get a shark of a lawyer that would sue everybody that was involved in this. You know, he would sue everybody, even that they didn't participate in the accident. You know, that what sharks do. Or bruisers,
it's interesting. I've seen here, like, you have a lot of signs for like after 9/11 call 911 call 411, like to get a lawyer to I guess sue someone.
No, here there are a lot of signs in which the lawyers. It's not legal in every state. I think it shouldn't be legal anywhere, but I don't think that businesses have a First Amendment right. But that's just my opinion. That's not the prevailing legal stance right now. But they put the signs and they put their number. Call me, and you know. And usually these guys that put the sign, it's a production line. They get your case, they look at the parts involved, and they see if it is a good liability case. In other words, they see if there is money to be sued. Yeah. If there isn't, they don't do anything.
Yeah,
they tell, I'm sorry, man, too bad for you.
This looked like it was a pretty high economic.
But in most cases, operation. They can go after the insurance company where there is money. And then they will get your medical records, they will get, or your death certificate, they will get whatever it is that they can, and they will sue the hell out of everyone. And if the bike was serviced very recently, even if the service was not directly the cause of it, probably just to see what happens, they'll sue the service company as well. They'll sue anybody. They'll sue everybody if they feel that there may be money. And then there are what we call the bruisers. Okay, the bruisers are attorneys that are super aggressive. They are really very good because they in the sense of being aggressive. They are going to sue everybody. They're usually going to get money out of it. In certain circumstances, you want a bruiser. I was driving someone the other day, and the guy was an attorney. And he gave me his card and said, hey man, if you ever have an accident, just call me. And I said, are you a bruiser? He said, not really. I said, then I don't want to come. You know, but thank you for offering. Because if I am in an accident and I want to make money out of it, then I want a bruiser. I don't know if I should say that on camera.
But what do you think of that whole concept? Do you think it's like that concept of private citizens suing each other or institutions for money in order to achieve restitution? Because obviously it's something that's very controversial.
I'm familiar. I think I am familiar enough, just familiar enough to have an opinion on it, and I think that there are situations in which it actually promotes some justice. There are cases in which it is necessary, especially in cases of a company doesn't give you the service that it should, like an insurance company. You have a health insurance, and then you get sick and you try to get coverage, and they refuse coverage and give some shitty excuses for that. In that case, you will need a lawyer. Better be a bruiser that will go after them and that will get your treatment paid for. Better be one. And there are cases in which it is abused. Okay. Then there are some states in which, in the case of traffic accidents, those are called they're called no fault states. It's where if you have accident, as long as nobody got hurt, nobody can sue anybody. There is no liability. All you do is you claim against your own insurance company. Your insurance company deals with the other insurance company. So if they feel that the other one is at fault, they have to settle among themselves, but they cannot go to court just for material losses and third-party liability. So that keeps a lot of people and a lot of insurance companies out of the court system. And then that lowers the cost. Imperfect as it is, I kind of like this system. But there are other states in which everybody ends up suing everybody. But I'll give you a different scenario in which it's very interesting how it works, and very bizarre. There are states in which if someone is committing a crime and you act in self-defense and you shoot that person, you run them over, whatever, you use lethal force, you hurt or you kill the guy, and the cops see that it's a clear case of self-defense, the court system sees that it's okay, self-defense, pretty good, you are clear of any criminal responsibility for it. Okay. Then in some states, now his family can still sue you. Because even though you didn't commit a crime, you in fact killed the guy. So now they can sue you for the loss of income, even though most of that income was stolen goods or or things like that. But they can still sue you. This is very common in England. Happens all the time there. Because England has a very weak figure of self-defense, and you can barely use it, and it doesn't protect you against liability at all. So here in a state like Massachusetts, for example, if a guy is attacking you and you manage to kill him, doesn't matter how, gun, car, hit him with a book like Jason Bourne and you kill the guy. Okay. If he's that kind of guy, a book is probably something lethal for him. So you kill the guy, now his family can sue you. So the way that you defend against that is that the moment that the situation happened, and then the next day you can think clearly, the first thing you do is you call a bruiser. You're going to call an attorney, and he's going to sue everyone. He's going to sue. If it was a business that it happened, he's going to sue the business. If it was, he's going to identify who is the family of this guy. He's going to sue the family. He's going to sue the girlfriend. He's going to sue the wife. He's going to sue everybody. With the businesses, the intent is that the business will not be able then to sue you first because maybe there was some damage, or maybe there was, you shot the guy, but you also shot the wall and the product, and you destroyed the TV or whatever. Maybe you caused some property damage. He's going to sue them first. He's going to argue that they didn't provide a safe environment. So then they will have to either counter-sue or they will just settle. And in the settlement, he's going to say, okay, he's not going to sue you guys anymore and ever, as long as you agree with two things. One is that he doesn't need to pay anything for damage, and the second is that you will never sue him. So this way he is preempting and defending you against a lawsuit from that business. And he's going to accuse the family of knowing, by being close to the criminal, they must have known that he was a criminal. And they didn't do anything to stop it, or at least they didn't do anything sufficient to stop him from committing a crime. And in consequence, he went ahead and tried to commit a crime, and now he's causing you tremendous psychological distress. And it's not that he can take, because they are probably poor, they cannot pay you anything anyway, he knows it. But he's going to get into a similar agreement with them, in which you stop suing them as long as they sign an agreement in which they will never sue you for anything. So this way it preempts lawsuits from every direction and gives you the proper liability coverage. Now, in a state like Florida has a law written in such a way that if you are clear in the criminal case, if it is clear self-defense, you can claim then you can use this law that they call stand your ground. Stand your ground protects you from liability, so nobody can sue you.
Yeah, I guess.
And to me, that's it's a very controversial law. It was very, again.
Yeah, I heard about it. Yeah.
Again, news not reporting correctly because they are too stupid to write and most people are too stupid to read. They kept attacking, and politicians and everybody kept attacking Florida because of stand your ground law, because the law was recent. It was passed recently, and then that case happened. But in that case, his attorney never used the law in his defense. He just used classic self-defense law, the law that was already existing before. He never used that in the legal case. So everybody was criticizing that the guy now could hide behind the law and he killed the boy. And I think that he was probably wrong in that case. Looking at the circumstances before what happened, he was probably wrong. And I think that the prosecution made a very poor case of prosecuting him correctly. They tried to get him in first-degree murder or something like that, and they didn't go for manslaughter because they had to do that in front of the cameras. And if they went for the second one, it would be relatively easy to put him in jail. They went to the other higher accusation where now the burden of proof was a lot higher and much more difficult. And then he didn't even need to use stand your ground law because the case was fucking badly put together. So the state lost and he got away. So everybody was complaining because of a law that was not used in the case. And they were not complaining of a prosecution that was politically motivated, was urgently called from the federal government, was put together in a hurry, pushed by the federal government because of political public opinion, and then he did a horrible job of prosecuting, and the guy got away. You know. Now I think that if he was charged correctly, he would probably be in jail. And if the case was brought up correctly, and he would have attempted to use stand your ground law, and I think he would fail, because looking at the case, I don't know, it's difficult to say from outside, but it's not that he couldn't defend his life. He could, but the circumstances that brought that altercation to happen could have been avoided. So it's not like he was just walking around and the boy attacked him, which would be a much more clear case. No, he was following the boy, he was annoying him, and there was an altercation, and the cops were on the phone with him telling him, don't engage with him. Stay at a distance. The cops kept saying that to him on the phone. And he was in a car. He was inside a car. All he had to do is lock the car and drive away. If he had followed the advice of the cops, the boy would be alive.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Do you have any experience with Spirit Airlines? Do you like them or like?
I think I flew Spirit once. Don't remember them. So that means there wasn't anything amazing about it, but nothing too bad either. I just don't remember. I remember flying them once.
Because there's something about these like really, really low cost airlines. I don't know if you have Ryanair here, but I guess they're pretty infamous in Europe.
I flew them there, and I flew Wizz Air. What I don't like about airlines like Spirit and Wizz Air and the others is that some of them, it's not all of them, but some of them, they don't assign the seats. So everybody gets in, and then it's a fucking fight. You get in, and you are competing for seats. It's
I didn't even know they were allowed to do that.
There is such a thing. I think it was Wizz Air. I don't remember now, but I remember that I really didn't like the experience. I thought, this is shitty. This looks like a bus in South America. It's you're fighting for a seat here. So actually, I end up walking. I took the back door of the airplane. I end up getting on one of the last rows, and because they didn't want nobody wants the fucking middle seat, right? and everybody's trying to walk away from the disgusting people. So it's I don't like that system. I prefer to assign, even though I may end up with a middle seat. And sometimes now there are websites that sell these super cheap tickets that they don't let you choose a seat.
Yeah, it seems like most of them do that now. But the reason I ask
some
is
of them don't. Last time that I flew to Europe, I got to Germany and I went to check in really early and asked, so what is my seat? I never had a chance to choose. I said, oh yeah, some websites like that. But my seat was not too bad. But it could have been a terrible seat, between two big guys. I wouldn't want that. I prefer window or aisle. But the entire situation is really weird. So I thought, prefer. And also, when you fly super cheap airlines, now you have to take into account the fact that if you have any luggage, it's going to cost you more. So you have to look at the prices thinking that everything is going to be $50 to $70 more. Because to check in a luggage is like $50. I was in Budapest, I had to pay 45 euros extra to check in from there to Ukraine. So, it made that ticket comparable to a ticket nearly, considering that I had to do that twice, I could have bought a better ticket in a different airline that wouldn't charge me for the first bag. Because here's the problem. If your ticket is international, you don't need to pay for the first bag. But my second ticket was within Europe. And then they can charge you.
Yeah.
Like in a domestic flight here, they can, but they don't do that on the international flights. So... And if I see certain airlines, I know that it's going to be good. The Turkish Airlines has a great reputation. I think they deserve it. It's a very good airline. TAM from Brazil is very good. If you fly, their tickets are not the cheapest, but they are so good. And Norwegian Airlines are great.
And kind of enjoy the brutal honesty of that an airline is trying to scam you, and then it's more like a kind of a competition of the minds of not trying to get screwed over, which I kind of enjoy when what the situation is like, and you have to dodge all the errors.
I so just like that. I just like that situation in which you and the company serving you are adversaries. Like they are trying to make you, they're putting out the straps on your way, trying to make you fall into one of them so they can charge you more.
Do you like that, or did you
I hate it. I think it's an adversarial relationship that will not make you love the airline.
No, you hate the airline.
You hate it.
But it's kind of like you hate your enemy, but you love them at the same time.
I don't know. I just hate them. And the poor thing working behind the counter has to take shit all day because people get upset.
Yeah, I remember checking in for my flight here to Miami. I flew with Norwegian, and the person I checked in with kind of looked surprised when I smiled at her. I think she was, and it went really smoothly. There were no problems with my application or anything. So I think she was just surprised that I didn't.
And Norwegian has a good reputation. It's generally fine. It's generally okay. But I really don't like that adversarial relationship. It's like they're playing catch. It's like suddenly they can charge you something and they go like, ha ha, we got you. We got you here. You thought you were saving money with us. I really don't like it. I would much prefer a more honest. And there are some companies in the high end, high price, that treat people really well.
Have you flown with any of the Middle Eastern ones, like Qatar?
I flew Emirates once a long time ago, and it was good. But now the reputation is awesome. It keeps getting better. People that fly a lot, they tell me that, wow, Emirates,
really
it's
nice,
awesome. Another one is Singapore Airlines, has a great reputation. But this one, TAM, I used to know one of their directors. We used we did some travels together in Brazil because we were looking at boats, part of a boat project. And so I traveled with this guy and some other guys. And so he was one of the directors of the airline. And so we were all flying for free. And he told several stories about the founder. The name of the guy was Comandante Rolim Amaro. He used to be a pilot. He started the airline from zero. He was a pilot, grew the thing, but the customer service was top notch. So he told stories like one day someone ordered the delivery of some piece of equipment in the south, and they didn't process it correctly and fast enough in São Paulo, so that cargo missed the flight. And it was something that the customer paid for same-day delivery because it was urgent. And his secretary, and then the company called to complain. And the call was transferred up, and just 2 transfers up, it was at the secretary of the president. And she heard of it, and without consulting anybody, she had that cargo, she chartered a plane, a jet, got the cargo in alone and flew itself. And he said that it cost them some $25,000 to do that. And because the president was not there, he was traveling, so she couldn't reach him. So she did that. She spent $25,000 in order, and the thing arrived the same day. And when he came back, he sent a memo to everybody involved. He said that she spent all that money, and it was a great loss, and to the company. And this once, she was being commended. He was appreciating that she did it, because at the end, the company fulfilled their promise to the customer. So she was clear, and he said thank you to her. He said, but everybody else involved in that being late, if it happens again, someone will pay for it. You pay with your job. That is incompetence. It doesn't work. But making it work to make sure the customer is happy, yeah, that is okay. So next time you guys get your shit together. And there are several other situations, like the way they treat people, the way they didn't want to have that situation that you have better food there and crappy food here. He used to fly, even while he was the president, he used to fly coach all the time, so he could experience how it is. He could have a clue of, and the directors used to fly coach. In fact, we had to fly coach with everybody else, with the director, because he wouldn't fly business class. So it was a philosophy of, we have to fly with the people that are paying the least. We have to eat their same food. We have to feel how it is to be them, and make sure that that is good enough. It cannot be crappy. It cannot, the seats cannot be too close. There are some certain things that you need to keep the standards. And he did it like that to the point that he died. He had an accident and died. And I'm wondering, since then I never flew with them again, and I'm wondering if they're still that good. The reputation still seems to be great. There was another story that he told me, that in his being a director, one of the things he has to deal with are very unusual cases of lost luggage. And there was this lady flying back from Europe, somewhere in Europe. And when they cannot find their luggage, they give a form and ask the person to list everything they had and estimate the value. And then they say, if we don't find your luggage in 1 week, we are going to pay you this. you know, so we're going to replace it all for you. And she listed like computer and this coat and this other thing and, you know, and everything. And it was like $10,000. It was a crazy amount for one luggage, one piece of luggage. And so the thing ended up at his desk. And he said, yeah, find the fucking luggage. Because if you don't find it, we will pay. We will honor it. And they found, after like 4 days, they found the luggage. It got mistagged somewhere. And so they found it and they sent it to her destination. But they asked her, he was on the phone with her. He called her in person. And he said, look, I have your luggage here. You know, you got here to my office. But I would never open it without your consent. I would never do it. But I asked him, I'm so curious. Can I please look? And she said, yeah, of course, open it. You know, and he opened, and everything that she listed was there. Everything. So it was a very interesting case that not just the company doing the right thing, but also the passenger doing the right thing. That is a certain. Dan Ariely has some videos on YouTube. He's a scientist at MIT. And he talks a lot about that, about how people cheat, how people lie, and things like that. And he explains that when you feel that someone or a company is really treating you well, he has a tendency of making people also treat the company well in return. It does influence the behavior of people if it is evident enough. You know, like when you discover that there is something wrong in your car, and even though it's a little questionable that if warranty is going to cover it, but they cover anyway. You know, they make sure that you're happy. You know, yeah, you start feeling different about that company. Now you want to bring more business to them. That is a certain relationship that happens.
Yeah.
And if the relationship is adversarial, you know, they are trying to fuck you, and now, then, yeah, when people have a chance, they screw the company back.
Yeah.
You know, it happens all the time. Even good people do that. You know, sometimes. So the rules for luggage get tighter. What happened? People try to cheat them more and more and more. The moment that the allowances for weight on the luggage got lower, what happened? The average luggage got closer to that limit. Because now people are trying to maximize it. You know, so there is a lot of problems with that.
Yeah.
But you don't. The good thing is that we don't need to go on opinion. Now there is enough science, enough statistical work that show how those things work in reality. And it's very easy for a company to look at that and decide how to do things. I remember having situations with Apple, for instance, a company that I like to use. And I had a situation with my first iPhone that I don't remember what it was. But they look at it and they said, yeah, but you know, the way you did it, this doesn't work like this and now that. But now the only way to fix it is by sending it to wherever they send it, and then we have to send it back. But because of the gravity of the problem, and we understand that it's your only phone, and now that I am authorized to just give you a new one. So fine then, you know, then they just gave me another. It's one of those, you know. Maybe that is the policy anyway, but by treating people better, they feel emotionally connected to that.
Oh, absolutely.
There is an emotional connection that is generated, and that's why people love their Teslas, and they love their Apples, and they love their whatever it is, you know, their Harley Davidsons, or well.
Absolutely, but wouldn't you agree that that's on one end of the spectrum and the other one, because it does come with a cost. I mean, these products are quite expensive, like Apple products, for instance.
They are.
And at the other end, I mean, I find it quite annoying when it's services that you use a lot, but just airlines, it's almost so crass that I find it somewhat ironically amusing, trying to get screwed all the time by.
I really like to remember that video. I'll put a link here. That video of Louis C.K. explaining that everybody should be amazed that they're flying, right?
Yeah, and so cheap.
You are sitting in a chair in the sky.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that. It brings you into a positive vibe when you are in an airport or dealing with airlines. But yeah, that is you see the great service more commonly in expensive businesses, in businesses that are expensive. But there are certain things that even the being cheap is not an explanation for it. I'll give you another anecdote. Every fast food in America does exactly the same thing. When they launch a product, it has a certain size. And then every year it gets a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. Oh yeah, a little bit smaller. For instance, Pollo Tropical had this wrap that they created. It was a nice traditional. No, it wasn't Pollo Tropical. They had the same problem with their wrap, but the company that I noticed this first was Taco Bell. They had this awesome wrap that they called the XXL wrap. So it was really big and nice and amazing. And I ate that sometimes. And then every year it got smaller. And last year I went to Taco Bell and I ordered it, and it really literally went from like this big to like this big. It's fucking small. It's still called XXL.
Really? That's actually
so what
interesting
happens?
to hear.
Every year.
Did you look it up? Sorry, but did you look up like the measurements and everything, or?
No, I didn't go online. No, I'm not that anal. I just was disappointed.
No, but I can totally imagine that.
No, but what happens is this: every time that they lower the size, the profitability of that product goes up. They make a little more profit. And short term, it's good. It gives them more money. They have a good result at the end of the quarter. Everybody's happy. But then they keep doing it. They keep doing it. At some point, it's going to cross a line in which people start to notice. The people that like XXL start to notice that it's not XXL anymore. They buy it less. And then it goes down. Same thing happens to banks. Every time it's the same story. A bank is not doing that well, or it's not growing well enough. A bigger bank buys it and becomes even bigger, right? And then that bank that when it was smaller had a great service, now it is absorbed by the big one and by the new rules, and usually the service quality goes down. For example, I opened an account on Wachovia, and then it became something else, and then it became Wells Fargo, and the quality keeps going down and down and down. At some point, you're treated like cattle inside the bank. What happens? The bank goes bankrupt, and then it is bought by another bank. The same story happens. Just follow. Get any bank that existed in the 80s. Okay, get 2 or 3 brands and start following them, and you see the same thing. Going up, the quality keeps going down. Then profitability at some point tips down, and then they are absorbed by another bank. And a lot of people lose their jobs, and then a lot of people gain new jobs, and because they grow anyway. But there is always this rotation of people working in retail banking, that they keep going from one bank to another because they open and they grow and they break and they drop everybody, and then they get jobs again in banking, because usually that's what they like to do.
Yeah, and I guess the financial industry in general is very interesting, just to look at how incentives are being rewarded, and I mean, because it is really structured only on theoretical values.
No, but it is on the short term. Those moves make sense because they have to. The CEO and most of the executives, they have to report quarterly.
Yeah.
So they need to do things in such a way that that raises profitability on the short term.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
And then it's a group of smart people having to take decisions that on the long term are dumb. It happens in so many industries,
Absolutely.
so frequently. And in
But
the food industry, it's a constant. Every product keeps going down, keeps going down, keeps going down. Then they need to refund. They need to put a bunch of new things and all that, and then get some excitement again, and people buy more, and then they can show a good result at the end of the quarter. But no CEO in America can go more than a couple of quarters with bad result without getting kicked.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist.
And it's kind of the same with trainers for professional teams, just because some of the things that turn out. I mean, if a team loses a certain amount of matches in a row, they always switch trainers, even though statistically, even though statistically that's, I mean, bound to happen sooner or later, no matter.
Bound to happen because it's impossible for most teams to win. Most teams will have to lose.
But one thing I was thinking about travel is, you said you traveled a bit with Emirates. Have you ever tried like first or business class in any of these finer airlines? Because I guess that's on my bucket list.
I did a lot. You know in what airline I flew first class a lot?
Continental.
Because I used to game their system so well, and that I, using the miles for this, and then I would, book this way and get it was at a time, I would say up to 2009, it was relatively easy to get a free upgrade. Especially when an airline had 2 flights the same day. They were like separated by 1 hour or 2. I would book on the first 2 flights for the same destination. Like Continental has 2 flights from Brazil to Houston. And they are separated by 1.5 hours. So I would book on the first flight, and the first flight is because it's early in the evening. It is usually overbooked. So at some point they start saying on the thing, hey, someone, we need a volunteer to stay to go to the next flight. And when they say next flight, a lot of people forget that the next flight is just 1.5 hours later. It's one dinner. It's 4 beers later. Right? So it's not much. So when they say, I raise my hand, and then they call me. Because usually they offer $300 voucher or $400, something like that, right? They start offering like 200, and then they up if they don't have enough volunteers because they overbook so much. But then I go there and I say, but I don't want the voucher. Then they don't understand. So what's the deal? So I will fly on the other one, but I want you to put me in business class or first class. And usually I got it.
But how often is it that it's so overbooked? I mean,
most of the time.
Most of the time, really?
Most of the time.
Between those specific locations?
Most airlines overbook most of the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But how often? Because I've only had it happen to me once that they start calling it out.
Most of the time, because if they overbook and people show up, now they need to move people around.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the reason they overbook is because most of the time people don't show up. But have you had it happen to?
For instance, right now there is a hurricane coming, right? No, everybody that booked to go out will go out. Yeah. So they will be doing that negotiation all the time. But if there is not too much time, or if you don't mind staying in the city another day or something like that, you may get a pretty good reward. And usually what I ask is for, I want to fly first class. Because if the first flight is overbooked, but the second flight then rarely is. Because everybody's trying to book the earlier one, not the one that is a 9, not the one that is at 10:30. So I got first class several times. And also on Delta, I did it a bunch of times because I accumulated an incredible amount of miles. So I could get free upgrades. So I flew first class Delta and Continental.
Because I figure, like, for me, first class on, say, Emirates or Qatar is kind of on the bucket list. I don't know. Do you have a bucket list?
I do, but it does not include flying first class.
No. It's not.
My bucket list has only things that I never did.
No, it's. I don't have it expressively on there, but maybe I should put it on there somewhere. But I got the tip of actually writing down a bucket list, and I'm really happy that I started doing that, because you do tend to forget things.
I'll tell you this. Of course, first class on Emirates must be probably better than first class on Delta. I don't know. But even the worst first class is still really fucking good.
Oh yeah.
It's very nice to fly. It's so funny. You go through security and they take in, if you have a knife, they will take it away, right? But guess what? They give you. They give you a knife and a fork at first class.
Maybe if you ask, they might give you a firearm as well if you flew on.
I don't know, man. It's very nice. It's very luxurious, and
I mean, I don't think it's worth the money whatsoever, but that's why it needs to be on the bucket list.
No, but it's usually business. Yeah. People that fly for business, or rich people, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. That's but why.
I would. Oh yeah, I remember. I went once. I don't remember now what airline was it, but I went first class to Cincinnati once from here. But it was for a job interview. And they gave me a business class ticket in an airline. But it was business, so they have a budget there. Okay, now this is for flying.
Maybe they have a deal with the airline or something.
Yeah, usually they have a nice program, a relationship with an airline program.
I figure one of those like Saudi. I was about to say golden showers in the airplane, but that has probably other connotations.
I think that would be even more expensive than first class.
Yeah, maybe free depending on what airline you're.
If it is, depends if you're getting that on first class or back in the bathroom. But
I was wondering now, like I know Spirit probably doesn't have first class tickets, but the Hurricane is supposed to hit on what? Saturday? Sunday even. Because I'm flying out. Yeah, maybe Wednesday evening is a bit too early, but I would be happy to crash in the airport for a night for a few $100. Definitely.
Yeah, but when you take the voucher's only good to spend at that airline. So to me, I don't fly enough for that to matter.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want that. I would much prefer the upgrade.
Maybe a nice hotel and first class. That wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. And I remember doing that once in Ohio when I was flying out of Cleveland once. That they asked me to. They were overbooking, something like that, and I didn't mind staying another day because I was visiting a friend and I said, okay, I'll just take a taxi back.
Yeah.
Wasted an hour. Spend another day. Fly tomorrow.
Yeah.
So okay, then if you put me on business class, I'll go. And then I did.
I think that's a good choice.
Yeah.
And I'm even a little bit excited to see the Hurricane anyway. So for a fraction of a second, I considered staying here for a bit longer just to see what it would be like. But I realized that's both perverse and probably very stupid.
Why?
No,
we're staying here. We're not going anywhere.
Oh, but sticking around for 5 days is a long time.
5 more days? Well, you would get to see Miami very well.
Yeah, I would, I guess. Problem is, it seems like I found a very nice host in Panama City also.
No, that makes sense, too. No, and I have a house full. I wouldn't be able to host you.
Yeah, which would be a hurricane is one thing, but a hurricane while homeless is another thing.
That would be tough. I have 3 couch surfers arriving this Friday, so they are literally arriving for the hurricane. and I have also a friend that he lives on a boat, and he may be coming here because he's putting his boat in the mangroves, and he'll probably get a ride and come here to spend a couple nights. Because the hurricane really is tough for one day, so it will be pretty hectic for a couple of nights. And so Saturday night, people get indoors and stay until Monday morning or so.
How long have you been living here in Miami, by the way? This house?
This house, about a year.
About a year. In Miami?
Since 2000. I live here 2 years and then another 6, but I traveled so much. I would say if I add together all the time that I have been in Miami is about 6, maybe 7 years.
So you've seen at least a few hurricanes?
4 or 5 already.
Yeah.
That I was here. So yeah, it doesn't scare me anymore. I know exactly how to do or how to measure if I should leave or not.
And have you found like a certain mistake that people tend to make or that you made in the beginning? Like what is the most important?
In the beginning, I made the mistake of getting too stressed.
Yeah.
It was not necessary. It's simple. If you're on the beach, they will evacuate. You have to go. You have to leave. And you have to put stuff on the windows, do some preparations like that. But you have to go somewhere else. In that case, I had a friend that he arranged a place to stay way inland in a warehouse that is rated for hurricanes. So we basically camped inside a warehouse for a couple nights. That was it.
Let's say staying in town, is it just you stock up on water and some food?
But if you're staying, I got a few jugs of water that I filled up and I put on the back. That's cooking water. And tomorrow when I go out, someplace I'll probably find some water, and then I'll buy 2 big jugs of water. That's it. It's not. There will be 4 people here. So we don't need a lot of water. I'll buy 3 big jugs, and that's it. And a little more food than usual. I bought charcoal to do cooking on the grill.
Oh, nice.
Because the biggest problem is not the hurricane. The biggest problem is after the hurricane, where you may not have electricity for a few days, and you may not have water. The water supply may be bad, or it may be dirty. So the toilet will still work, but you don't want to drink that water.
But the toilet usually works?
If the water is dirty, the toilet doesn't care that it's dirty.
No, but the sewer system is usually intact, or
sometimes not. Sometimes it floods. Yeah, so the water may back up. But this neighborhood where we are is not a danger of flooding
because it's pretty high.
The streets will fill up a little, but it doesn't go high, and the house is nearly 2 feet high above the street level. The floor of the house. So here is not rated as a risk of flooding area, but you may not have electricity for a few days, and if that happens, if the city gets really hit too close, then you need to cook outside on the grill. I bought some cans of soup, and Friday I'm going to buy a lot of vegetables and stuff to cook on the grill if necessary. And we have some extra water. That's it. That's not much. Because otherwise, what can happen? The house is well built and it's old. This house survived a lot of hurricanes already. So I'm not expecting that it's going to lose the roof or anything like that. And the windows were replaced this year. They are all hurricane windows. So the only way for them to break is if something flies in, like a mailbox flies in or something, and hits them really fucking hard. Like these windows can take a lot of damage without breaking.
Do they have like medical supplies in any way, or like I don't know, some maybe it's overkill, but like basic antibiotics or something like that?
Yeah, we have very basic stuff. The basic first aid kit, and but there is not much to happen, because we are inland. The problem is if you are near the ocean, then, or right next to a river, then yes.
Do you know? Do they have anywhere when you say they evacuate and you have to leave? I mean, it makes sense, but do they have anywhere where, say, the government provides some basic shelter?
Yes.
Oh, they do have that. Okay.
Many. Most schools, a lot of they have many shelters around the state because Florida is affected by hurricane almost every year. There are options, there are places to go, but the shelters don't take pets. So when people have pets, they have to go to a private place.
It feels kind of harsh to leave your dog inside your house and then go.
I would say if you have a pet, you should be planning for it. You should be planning to go to a private place. Because you have a pet, it will be a problem. You cannot just leave it around. Well, people do, but they shouldn't.
Yeah, that seems pretty horrible.
Shouldn't. You shouldn't leave it behind. Sometimes people have to because they end up not being able to go back and pick it up, and there is all this kind of drama. But always, or you should leave the pet with someone that doesn't mind hosting the pet, and you go to the shelter, you know. But come on, if you don't have a single friend that can host you, that means either you just moved to the city or you are not very friendly.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to...
Gave too much attention to your dog, maybe.
Yeah. I have friends that they come, and you know, because it is an emergency, I wouldn't mind. I would ask them to leave the dog in the back, because I don't want dogs inside the house. Oh. But I would definitely host them if anybody knocks on the door and asks for help. Yeah. No, I'm already hosting a lot of people. Why not a few more in an emergency? Right?
Might be good to have a few more people to eat in case shit really hits the fan. Stack up on food supplies.
You mean to eat them?
Yeah, if worse comes to shove, then...
Then I would prefer to host vegans. They probably taste better.
You think so? I would imagine that. Really, I would imagine the opposite. I'm kind of surprised you said that.
Or at least people that don't eat junk food.
But I guess vegans are pretty skinny. Isn't like... If you think of like mutton or I guess it's called mutton, it's really tender because they don't really move around. And
I have the impression that lean meat is probably better, but I'll have to call my friend Dr. Nibble Lecter and ask his opinion, because he has more experience on that.
Yeah, true. I just imagine like the juiciest people would be. Yeah. If you're getting into weird topics, I imagine if we're getting into weird topics, I imagine like not moving too much but eating quite a lot would be the best to be a tasty human.
All the fatties, but they eat at McDonald's. I don't want that.
Yeah, but you can have like a tiny aftertaste of Big Mac. That would be nice, I guess.
Yeah. So what are your plans for the future, man? What do you want to do? Not on this trip. What do you want to do with the fucking life?
With my life? Well, I'm not religious, so I don't really have any overarching major life goals, but I do have a few things on my bucket list that I want to try. But generally, I want to try to be really good at the profession that I chose.
Which is?
Doctor. So
What kind of doctor?
I don't really know yet, but it's one of those things. I can't say that I've had a...
Like Dr. Lecter.
Yeah, exactly, Dr. Lecter. I think he was a psychiatrist, so maybe that's why I should aim for that.
Yeah.
Which actually seems pretty fun. But generally just try to take on that responsibility that it comes with taking care of other people's health and really become good at that. But on the more fun side, I really want to try to puzzle together some kind of life where I'm able to travel for long stretches of time, like a few months, and I do want to spend some time working for Doctors Without Borders if I get the opportunity.
I'm going to start another organization like that called Doctors Without Diplomas, and we are going to make a lot of money.
So many. Yeah, I don't know how much money Doctors Without Borders are making right now, but maybe it's the cost of the diplomas that's bringing it down. No, but that kind of amazes me, even as someone who doesn't, to be honest, really think that life has any major purpose. I still think it's very uplifting sometimes to realize how incredibly many opportunities I have to do things.
I'm not religious myself, and I don't think that is any outside purpose.
No.
I don't think there is anybody watching us and checking if you're masturbating or not or anything like that. But even without a complex philosophical purpose, other than self-assigned purpose, I still think that life is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
At least mine has been. But I understand when some people, they don't like their life and they decide to jump off the bridge, because sometimes a guy is like 40 years old and his life has been shit all the time. Has been shit throughout. If for 4 years it was shit, it's probably not going to get better. You know, so I don't don't really think that, and I'm joking. I understand that he may prefer to cash out. But my life has been pretty good, especially the last 15 years, I would say.
Do you think
it was good before, but now it's fucking awesome.
But do you think it's moving upwards still, or has it plateaued at a positive level?
Every year gets better. Every year gets better. I didn't have 2 similar years yet. So I don't feel the plateau yet.
Nice.
And I'm talking about everything. I'm even talking about my health. I'm talking about psychologically, my plans, the opportunities that I have, the relationships, the business, the way that I deal with problems. In every way that I can measure, my life is better every year.
Yeah, I think the key for me is that term self-assigned purpose, because in the absence of any external purpose, you can decide on basically whatever you want to have as your own purpose. And even though you might consider it to be meaningless on some meta level, you can still dedicate yourself to that quite intensely.
I think that a reasonable self-assigned purpose is still a lot better than a bullshit purpose assigned to you.
Yeah, I think it can be. Or if you want to,
it can be a lot better. It's something that you believe, something that and also understand that it may change. It may change. It may not change too. Because it's one of those things that sometimes you go through our entire life without changing it. But even if it does, it's still okay. There is no really bad answer to that. But I prefer this in a simpler philosophical outlook at it, without all the mystical angels and saints and demons and things, and dragons and what is this thing about religion anyway? It looks like Game of Thrones now. It has all these characters. I don't care for that. So I like to understand the mythological side of it. There is a guy called Jordan Peterson that he has amazing videos where he explains all the mythology and all the significance behind religion that actually matters to us. To us, everyone, including the non-religious people. It's very good to understand that, because they understand the common culture that we have with everybody, understands the common subconscious that people have, and also helps you understand why it is that people behave and feel the way they do. Amazing knowledge, but that's not religion. That's understanding how religion works and where it came from. And where it came from is much more important than the religion itself. So yeah, watch Jordan Peterson. Most of his videos are about that. So I like that, and I think that when you choose what are the values that you are going to live by, people that do that, they revisit and re-question those values constantly, in face of new information, in face of new knowledge, and in face of more wisdom. They keep improving, and then the values are not something rigid that they receive and it's this list, just don't do this. No, it's something much more elaborate, usually more detailed, and it's always evolving. So every year also your values keep getting better. And I think that's the same with me. I'm telling you, everything in my life keeps getting better. Of course I have problems, and occasionally I have some big challenge to solve. But even with the challenge, when I look at it, and among other things, one of the things that keeps getting better is my values, my choices of what to do and what not to do, and I think they keep getting a little more
fine-tuned, or
that may be the best way to say it. Fine-tuned, yes.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, happy with that. And on that note, I think we can close. I know you want to visit Miami, and I'm very happy that you agreed to do this podcast. In fact, sir, you didn't fuck it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good travels for you.
Thank you, the same.
We hope you like this podcast as much as we like to produce it. This has been made possible by the efforts of dozens of volunteers, supporters, partners, and visionaries that are helping us build Voyager's World. Please visit our website,